This is a More Than Just Podcast production.
Welcome to Podcast Season 6, Episode 7. My name is Tim Mitchell. I am in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined once again by Jonathan Kuline in Mississauga, Ontario.
Hello there, kids.
We also have Amy Lopez Jr. on the line in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
Home of the Kraken. Did they secure their playoff spot yet?
I have to look. I'm embarrassed to say that it's been a busy few days at work, and then everybody's been talking about season opener for the Mariners, so I got to see. But they have these overlapping schedules. Doesn't make sense. Just do them back to back.
Baseball.
It's the same thing we talk about with streaming. Don't have them overlapping. Make them back to back.
Yeah. Well, we have the Raptors and the Leaf, and then we have nobody else. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. We have the ladies. What league? The one like the big Isabella Cup.
Oh well, we had the Six. They won the championship last weekend, right?
The Toronto Six, yeah.
Seattle has not clinched a playoff spot yet, but it's pretty bunched up there at the bottom of the Western Conference. So we'll see.
Well, I hear the Leafs have cinched their spot.
They have, but that's because the Eastern Conference, once you get past about the ninth team, is pretty terrible. So.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. Well, don't worry. They'll lose in the first round of the playoffs. That's tradition here in Toronto. So.
They will be playing Tampa Bay again, so it's a distinct possibility.
Wow.
That's how it goes, because that's the way that stupid NHL playoff system works. Is they want you to play your division rivals, so it means that no matter how you break it down, they have to play Tampa in the first round, and they might have home ice, which will be nice, but they'll still have to beat Tampa, which is the defending Eastern Conference champions. And then if they win that, they will have to play the Boston Bruins, best team in hockey, by a good distance. So if they are going to win a Stanley Cup this year, and I would not put a dime on that, then they will have a hard path.
They only have to win 16 games. Look at it that way.
That's true. They just have to beat great teams for 16 straight games.
Yeah. Well, not straight, but they can lose a few here and there. But that's the reality of winning the Stanley Cup. It's not like a bracketed system where you get one shot and you're done.
Yep.
Right. Anyway, on that pleasant note, let's move on to the fact check. All right. So God of War is the app that I was thinking about that appeared on iPad at WWDC, not God of Guns or whatever it was. What was God? What were we talking about last week? God of something. We were talking about the Halo thing, the gods of something. I don't know.
Gears of War.
Gears of War. Yeah. That's what we were talking about last week.
So Gods of War. And to me, they're all the same. It's like sports ball, right? Anyway, but that's the app that came out on, and I guess they were bragging about how wonderful the iPad was because I could run that game on it as well. And we were talking last week about The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Robert Vaughn played Napoleon Solo, who I couldn't remember either of those two names. And David McCallum played Ilya Karakin in the 1966 version of Man from U.N.C.L.E. And the kiddos may not know David McCracken, but they would know him as the doctor on NCIS for a while. And they might know Robert Vaughn as the bad guy from Bullet if they ever watched that classic movie. Or he was also one of the cowpoke gunslinger guys in the original Magnificent Seven. But I was wrong about Mary Tyler Moore, though. She did do that thing where she was the secretary to Richard Diamond, private detective played by David Jansen, also the fugitive, right? And only her legs appeared on camera, but it wasn't the Man from U.N.C.L.E., but she did. I was right about the role, but I was wrong about the TV show. That's the fact check for this week. So we'll move on to headlines, and Jonathan's up with something Star Trek related.
Yeah, it's a great week for Star Trek news. We got a bunch of stuff. So I will start with a new series announcement. CBS and Paramount formally announced Star Trek: Starfleet Academy, new series that will follow a group of cadets at Starfleet Academy. This is coming to Paramount Plus, and who knows here internationally if it will be because it's a new property. I don't know if there's a standing agreement. It's going to be on Crave here. It's going to be on CTV Sci-Fi. They haven't said, but new series. They haven't said too much about it, but they also said that they are going to be producing this and that it's expected to come next year. So that's pretty cool. And they still haven't said what's happening with that Section 31 spinoff, which, as our fine colleague Jaime Lopez Jr. pointed out in our Slack chat earlier today, the price of which has gone up significantly since the star Michelle Yeoh is now an Academy Award winner. Yeah, I think we were just talking about the fact that obviously with Picard wrapping up and Discovery announcing its final season, that there was only going to be the one live action show, that is Star Trek Strange New Worlds. So now we know there's actually going to be at least 2 going forward. And so what do you guys think? I mean, this seems like a project that has been a no-brainer for 45 years. Like, it just seems like it's been lingering out there for a long time to do a Starfleet Academy series.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit like the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie where they had James Kirk and McCoy running around, in the Starfleet Academy at the beginning of that one, and a bit like Lower Decks too, I guess, right? As long as it doesn't end like Police Story or was that Police School or whatever that franchise was.
Police Academy?
Police Academy, yeah.
Okay, now I want that. Actually, I didn't want that before, but now I do.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see because we haven't really gotten that experience beyond a few flashbacks or a few teases here and there of like the Kobayashi Maru or which we've seen in some other shows, and I am kind of hoping that they make Boothby in some sort of way, give a little nod to him, because it seemed like he was a recurring character throughout, like captains getting to know the groundskeeper. So that might be a nice little, a tip of the hat to the character. And it's, it's different, right? Like we've got such an embarrassment of riches when it comes to Star Trek that exploring what happens when you decide that, yes, I'm going to leave perfect utopian life to go, scrub some plasma conduits. And maybe someday I'll become a captain, or maybe someday I'll be head of engineering or something. Like, it's just something we've never really seen. So seeing people who are a bit more raw and not well-trained regulation Starfleet is maybe kind of like a High School Musical version of Star Trek Enterprise, right? It was like, oh, this is all brand new. It's like, well, there's established stuff, but you don't know it because you didn't read that far in the book. So now Professor Michael Winslow is going to dunk on you with some sweet sounds describing your mediocrity, right?
I bet you could do a hell of a tricorder sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is cool. I mean, like I say, they kind of hinted at it a little bit way back in the TNG days when they did the whole like Wesley Crusher storyline, the Robert Duncan McNeil when he was just an ensign, or not even ensign, he was a cadet before he got his job on Voyager. They did that whole storyline that seemed like they were kind of maybe thinking backdoor pilot on that one, but it never really came to be. And yeah, it just feels like this has been sitting there. It's like the at some point someone's going to do the Star Wars Jedi Academy kind of deal too, right? Like, it just feels like those are the easiest projects to realize. You just have to set it at the school and then come up with I guess that's the thing, is how it's going to be a little more grounded. It's obviously not going to be out exploring space, so how do they keep that
it's going to be like Riverdale or the Archies, kind of.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Is it going to be like Buffy or Riverdale or any of those sort of like, teen
or Karate Kid or
Cobra Kai. Yeah. Like, it seems like that. And you know what? Those work. They clearly there's a reason why we're listing off a ton of different series that formula works.
Or
right?
anything on YTV up here, right? Like,
yeah, really. Yeah, no, it's good.
Or that show that Ariana Grande was on. I see her all the time on TV.
Oh yeah. She was on one of those Nickelodeon or Disney
Saved
shows.
By the Boss or Rung by the Bell or something. Yeah, who knows?
Well, so this leads us back into more Paramount Plus news. So this week they also announced that they are renewing Strange New Worlds for season 3 and Lower Decks for season 5 before we even got seasons 2.
Oh, we haven't. Oh, this is a new announcement for upcoming seasons. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So they announced when we're going to get season 2 of Strange New Worlds. They said it's going to premiere on June 15th. So we didn't know that previously, and they did say season 4 of Lower Decks does not yet have a complete date, but it will be late summer. So that makes sense. That's usually when we see that as sort of August area. So I would
they're probably
imagine
sharpening the pencils and grinding the ink down and stuff like that. Yeah,
that's it, right? So
getting the pixels all lined up. Yeah,
they're going to basically be, most of the summer. If you do 10 episodes of Strange New Worlds, then you have a week off, and then you jump right into 10 episodes of Lower Decks.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then renewals. So it's always a good sign when they renew the series before you even see the next season. That means that the studio has already seen what they've seen and like what they like and think it's going to be good and have enough faith in the showrunners and the actors and everyone involved in production that they want to make more. So it bodes well for the next seasons of Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks. But it also means, as I say, stability in this world where we're getting to the end of Picard. We know that Discovery is going to end next January, starting next January. But then, we know that we're going to get these again, and we know that we're going to get Starfleet Academy, and we know we've still got more Prodigy coming. So good time to be a Trek fan.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Speaking of spin-offs.
Well, we talked about Picard ending, but maybe not entirely. So good story this week that I've put into our show notes here from Gizmodo, IO9, talking about how, the popularity of this season and the popularity of the new characters they've introduced in this season are starting to sort of percolate, and they're getting to the point now where apparently the people who are involved are talking about, maybe it's not the worst idea to consider a spin-off based around whether it's the Titan or based around just some of the characters. But, we talk about the characters that they've introduced or reinvigorated. So again, we've got we got Shaw, of course, who's been a real fun, wisecracking captain who's been a fun character. We've got Sydney and Alondra LaForge, of course, Jack Crusher. We still have, Seven of Nine. We still have, other characters, Raffi. There are sort of the non-legacy, although you could argue Jerry Ryan said legacy character, but there are some non-legacy new characters that would definitely be interesting to explore the next generation of the next generation. Right. And so apparently this is something that is at the very least being discussed. What do you guys think of the idea of continuing in this particular era of Trek and in this, keeping with some of these characters who we've enjoyed this last little run?
We see it in network television all the time with, CSI this and CSI that and Law and Order this and Law and Order that. I mean, it's, once they hit on a pretty popular formula, they just change, we're in Chicago now instead of LA and whatever, right? So I could see that happening. I mean, and obviously Trek, I think they can also go by the numbers, right? Trek seems to be it's done a lot more. It's been much more successful, with the reintroduction of, notwithstanding Discovery. Discovery is kind of its own thing, but Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds have sort of been surprises, I think, to a lot of people, right? And it's a tried and true formula where they take something successful and they just slightly change it a bit, I think it's realistic to think that Patrick Stewart isn't going to be Picard forever. I mean, let's be realistic, because that's just the way life is. But there's no reason why the younger folks like Seven of Nine or maybe there's going to be a Barclay spinoff. Who knows, right? One can dream, or Morn. Maybe Morn will actually get some lines to say in a show, right? But I mean, and obviously, they've even joked about making a live action version of Lower Decks with the actors because they're all pretty young as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Although they don't all look exactly like their voices or their character. I mean,
they do a little bit. They do a little. I mean,
the guy that plays the guy with the cyborg implant.
Rutherford.
Yeah, he's not.
Yeah, Eugene Cordero definitely looks a little bit different than Rutherford. He
could wear heels. I mean, it works for Tom Cruise. It could work for him, right?
Yeah, and again, sometimes it's just a little prosthetics or a little CGI After Effects or whatever.
Yeah, like the Hobbit and Gandalf. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the actress who plays Tendi isn't green either. I'm sure we can figure that out, right?
Right. Okay. Right.
But yeah, I think it would be funny. Yeah, was it Noel Wells? Yeah, I think it's fun that we're getting into an era where anything's possible, and the idea of doing a spinoff of this, based on this season, which has been terrific. I think I'd be down for that for sure.
Cool. Yeah.
All right, let's get into some Marvel news. So we'll start with the most sort of interesting, surprising news of the week, which is Disney fired the chairman of the board for Marvel, Ike Perlmutter. I think I've mentioned Ike's name before. He was famously the person at Marvel who tried to get Kevin Feige fired and lost this sort of power struggle over, the television / movie world. He was sort of the senior person in charge for a long time of that. And he was the one who was sort of pushing the agenda of, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Ghost Rider and Inhumans and that stuff on ABC that kind of in the end sort of fizzled out and was replaced by the Disney Plus stuff. But he was he was sort of it's lost in the annals of history because apparently Ike was not the most fun person to work for. Apparently he's quite a miser, quite a penny pincher, according to these articles, it's allegations. But also he was definitely responsible in a way for keeping Marvel alive when things were looking very bleak. He was the one that negotiated the deals that basically licensed out X-Men and Spider-Man to other filmmaking companies that ended up basically making the original Spider-Man movies, the original X-Men movies, and that infusion of cash kept Marvel alive long enough for the sale to Disney to go through in order to basically revitalize Marvel and make it the monolith that it is today. Without Ike, Marvel dies. So again, dropping him, even while admittedly he'd lost a lot of power and he was sort of, no longer quite as important in the grand scheme of things. It's a big deal. This is a big deal. This is somebody who, while admittedly not necessarily the nicest person, was instrumental in keeping Marvel alive when it was teetering on the brink of bankruptcy and so pretty surprising news. This comes amidst Disney laying off 7,000 employees to try and get $5.5 billion. It says is what they'll gain in the long run by these layoffs. I imagine Ike himself made a quite substantial amount of that money because to be the chairman of the board for Marvel probably pays you a couple bucks.
Right.
But yeah, it was this was surprising, and some really good pieces that are sort of out there. If you're into that sort of behind the scenes boardroom drama kind of stuff, there's some interesting stuff about this. But yeah, like I say, this is not nothing. This is a big deal, and it does change fundamentally how things could be done over there, particularly because Ike was responsible primarily at this point for the Marvel world, that is the publishing world, the Marvel comics stuff. So it'd be interesting to see what the long-term ramifications are there and who replaces him and how that goes. But
yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the whole Disney streaming thing, because I was listening to an episode on another podcast. They played sometimes they put like one podcast will play another show's episode, and I was listening to an episode of Marketing Against the Grain, and I apologize, I don't know who's on it. It looks like Kip Gardner and Kieran Flanagan. But they were talking about, one of them was talking about the fact that they were talking about the comparison between the studios and streaming and the kind of, like, apparently streaming has hit a lot of the streamers hard in that they're not getting the revenues they expected, as we've talked about before on the show. But it was really interesting that the numbers in terms of drop, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. I'll get them for next week. But yeah, it was quite interesting to hear the difference in dollars and cents between a TV show and a movie versus and broadcast versus what they're actually getting for this on streaming services, and that's why there's all this sort of shakeup in services that are doing streaming, like the Netflixes and the Disneys and that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, to us, it sounds like it's coming from left field, but when you look at the marketing dollars that are involved and stuff like that, it really isn't, right? It's not surprising they're doing all these layoffs and stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you're right. We talked about it previously, how, I mean, I defy you to find the difference. Having watched like Mandalorian this week, find me the difference between the effects budget and scale and scope of what they're doing on something like Mandalorian versus what they're doing if they're doing a production for a film. Like it's the quality is so high, it must cost them a ton to make each one of those episodes.
Sure. Yeah.
And then you think about that times the number of series that they've committed to, the Marvels, the Star Wars, the Lord of the Rings, like all these things. It's an expensive proposition. No wonder these companies are, trying to figure it out. And again, we talked about the flawed model, right? The flawed model is they are trying to do this based on get more subscriptions, get more subscriptions, get more subscriptions. Well, that runs out. That doesn't always work forever. So, yeah, it's interesting.
And they pretty much agreed with what I was saying before about the fact Netflix does it wrong by delivering everything all at once, right? And this is why Netflix is bleeding so much, is because they don't create the hook that keeps people coming back every week, right?
Yep. All right. This one was also out of left field and extremely surprising. Jonathan Majors, the actor who plays Kang in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, was arrested on Saturday and charged with strangulation, assault, and harassment after a domestic dispute in New York City. Mm-hmm. The New York Police Department has confirmed. He claims innocence, and obviously this will play out in the courts. But this is a pretty scary and upsetting development, especially when you consider that Jonathan Majors was intended to be sort of the linchpin of the next phase of Marvel and be the big bad. It's pretty scary, these allegations. It's pretty upsetting. And, while certainly it remains to be played out in court, and it remains to be, hopefully the truth will come out. Anytime that a star of your franchise is accused of anything like that is pretty severe and could have pretty major ramifications. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they have to recast or make other decisions around those kinds of things. And yeah, that's not nothing.
Yeah, and it's that same debate we've been having over and over about separating the artist from the art, and mm-hmm. And also we had our friend John Gameshi in Canada, who was a pretty mm-hmm. popular radio host and was accused of a similar thing. And that just went real south, real fast. And yeah, I mean, it's almost when I saw this in the notes today, I thought, oh, here we go again, another case where do we boycott this movie? Do we boycott mm-hmm. this franchise? Do we boycott this actor? Is he innocent until proven guilty? All those sort of things, that how much slack do we cut him? That kind of stuff. And yeah, so it's an awful position to be put in as a viewer, but also like you said, we got to wait and see what's going to happen with this, right? I mean, who knows? He might run for president next week, for all we know.
Yikes!
Had to get that in there. Sorry.
I know we've talked about this before, but when you got somebody like this who's sort of he's already a star. Like, he's the star of the new Creed movie. He's the star of a previous movie, star of the latest Ant-Man movie, and we know, like, they literally named one of the Avengers movies after this character, so we know he's going to be huge. Does it give you the willies? Does it make you nervous?
Yeah, and I'll call out some of the mainstream media that I saw that like covered this from such a weird angle of like, oh, he's got this like new movie coming out that was it's Sundance. I'm like, Sundance? Are you not paying attention to the like very large economic effects that this has? Like, if you're going to completely bypass the whole human interest story around domestic violence and other things, right? If you're going to go talk about like purely the economics, like, no offense to indie filmmakers, but like, your film does not change an entire industry normally, right? Maybe it will, maybe I'll be wrong and this was the changing one, but like, this dude here is, like you said, the face villain of billions of dollars worth of movies, right? Yeah. With lots of people at stake. So it's like, well, what are you going to do? Is Tig Notaro going to replace him? There's no Christopher Plummer. We know that, right? Like, well, what's happening here? I'm like, oh, wow, it's just mind blowing. Like, this is in many ways quite a bit different than the Justin Roiland stuff, right? Where it's like, yes, he is very well known as the voice of Rick and Morty, but you can find pretty good voice actors who can imitate that voice style, right? Will they bring the same sort of pizzazz and freestyle? That's a little bit different, but you could have somebody replace. How are you going to replace this dude? Like, well, we did establish that, Spider-Man could look like Tobey Maguire or Tom Holland or Andrew Garfield. So Kang is just different in this multiverse, and then just move on. Bring, I cannot remember that dude's name. The first roadie before Don Cheadle. Thomas Howard?
Yeah.
Tim Howard?
Terrence Howard.
Terrence Howard. Yeah, they bring that dude back to be like, emphasize that fact too. They're like, oh yeah, that's right. Like, there's maybe some ways to write around this, but it's, ignoring the going through the criminal justice system and what's true and what's not. And like, there's all of that stuff, but the economic impact of this could be pretty large.
Yeah. Yeah. And the worst part of it is, he's a really talented actor. Like, he's good. He's good at what he does. And that's almost the most disappointing part is, he seemed, I can't profess to know a ton about him, but, it seemed like his trajectory was straight upwards, his performances on a few different things over the past few years, in addition to now this huge part in the Marvel universe. And he's delivered. Like, he was terrific in Loki. He was really good he was probably the best part of that Ant-Man movie. Yeah. And it's just like, damn it. Like, it's the same way I kind of felt with the Justin Roiland thing. Like, damn it, but I liked you and now I don't like you anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, it remains to be proven. Obviously, there's, it's before the courts and, it'll come out as it comes out. But again, just anytime these kinds of things are tied to somebody who we cover, it's just disappointing and it's saddening.
And what do you do? Do you put when somebody's on the rise and they're going to be the new face of? Do you put them in a silk lined box and don't let them out, kind of thing, so they don't get out there and mess up in real life? Like, it's disappointing, but this just seems to happen over and over again. These human beings who have human characteristics and flaws. And again, we don't, like you said, we don't know. This has not been proven in court, and even and will it ever even? We have the kangaroo court of public opinion, right? Mm-hmm. And that's just, it doesn't matter what's the truth or not. I mean, it's how the majority is going to see this person's supposed behavior or actual behavior. We'll never know, really.
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate.
Well, I guess we'll see how this plays out, but so let's move on to our next bit of Marvel news, which is, and this one was interesting. So Liv Tyler, they confirmed this week that Liv Tyler has joined the cast of Captain America: New World Order, and she's going to be reprising her role as Betty Ross from the Incredible Hulk movie, which, as you'll recall, she starred in as the love interest against then Edward Norton as the Hulk. So this is a weird one because...
And that was a Jennifer Connelly role, right?
Jennifer Connelly was in the Eric Bana one, right?
Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it was Eric Bana and Jennifer Connelly. Then it was Ed Norton and Liv Tyler. And then once they moved into the Mark Ruffalo era with the Avengers, they decided this is our Hulk. We're sticking with Mark Ruffalo. They have not brought back the Betty Ross character. They've alluded to it in the fact that they have the Veronica armor. So Betty and Veronica, ha 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 ha. But they haven't reprised this character and they haven't recast this character. So of course you could bring Liv Tyler back to play this role. It's just like Jaime was talking about with Terrence Howard. Like, it would be like finding a character who had played somebody in a previous movie and just sort of shoehorning them in and being like, hey, Bruce, how's it going, buddy? And you're like, whoa, wait, what? Like, now, I don't think the Hulk is necessarily, and I don't think there's any reason so far to believe that that we're going to see the Hulk in Captain America: New World Order. So maybe that will be less incongruous and that, won't be a big deal. But yeah, it's pretty weird. It's a pretty weird casting move. What do you guys make of this?
Yeah, I mean, because why would they, again, if like you just said, that just threw me off. Like, why wouldn't they if they're going to bring her back, why wouldn't they have the Hulk in the movie? Because then, to someone who doesn't know the connection between her and the Hulk, why would she even be there? And also in this article, didn't it say that your favorite new actor, Harrison Ford, was going to be her dad?
Yeah, so in the Incredible Hulk movie, for those that don't remember, she plays both Edward Norton as Bruce Banner's love interest, but she also is the daughter of Thunderbolt Ross, Thaddeus Ross, who is the military general who's trying to catch the Hulk and chasing him around. Of course, we had that character played by William Hurt for a long time. William Hurt unfortunately passed away, and so has been Harrison Ford is stepping in to the role of Thaddeus Ross going forward. So again, making things even weirder because now she's going to be like, "I love you, Daddy." Nope, Daddy was the other guy. He died. So it's becoming kind of weirder and weirder that we're getting like some recasts, some precasts, some it's a very kind of unusual way of coming at this stuff. And again, I like Liv Tyler. She's a good actor, and I think she's gorgeous. It'll be interesting to see how they do this and try and make it a little more seamless, logical.
I know.
Yeah. And our last bit of Marvel news, Secret Invasion. They have finally given us a release date. June 21st, 2023 on Disney+. We will be getting the Samuel Jackson-led series that is focusing on this sort of a Skrull conspiracy that was hinted at in both the Captain Marvel movie and then later in Spider-Man Far From Home. So yeah, it'll be
so is this a Nick Fury pre-make or what?
No, this is set I think in the now. It doesn't seem like this is a prequel series. Of course,
is he back after the blink or whatever it was called, the snap?
Well, yes. So he's back, but if you'll recall in those two movies, and then again in WandaVision, there's a bunch of different ties into this one. So Secret Invasion is a comic book series about how the Skrulls basically started secretly disguising themselves as human beings because they can change their shape. And they started taking over key positions and replacing very important people in Starfleet, right? Earth. Yeah. Okay. Pretty much the same thing we're talking about for the current season of Picard. But the impact of that in the comic world was really interesting because what they maintained was that the Skrulls were not killing the people that they replace. They're capturing them and they're keeping them. And so what they were doing was basically the idea was that Secret Invasion had been happening for years on Earth. So a number of heroes who we thought were themselves were actually Skrulls, including ones who had died. So it was basically Marvel's opportunity to reach back into their toy box and say, well, actually, it wasn't Mockingbird, who we met in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the Bobby Morse character. It wasn't her that died in the comic books. It was the Skrull agent disguised as her that died there. And they actually had her on ice. So that way we can bring the character back and tell more stories with her. So that is kind of the interesting angle that I'm looking to on Secret Invasion is, are we going to see returns of characters that have maybe either died, or are we going to see sort of some of these little twists and turns and stuff like that you can get into when you have, basically characters who can morph into anybody.
Black Widow didn't really leave the end game thing. It was actually a Skrull, and so Scarlett Johansson can come back. And perfect example, yeah, absolutely. Something just like that. They could be like, well, it wasn't actually this character that died, or wasn't that character who did something. It's not even deaths too. It can be just like undoing stupid things. Like if you have a character who does something wildly out of character, they can just be like, oh yeah, no, the real person would never do that. Maybe it was a Skrull that was playing Kang. Yeah, exactly. Right. But so this is basically it's being billed as a mini series. It's loaded up with talent. It's crazy. Like Emilia Clarke from Game of Thrones. We've got what's his name from Rogue One, Ben Mendelsohn, who was Krennic from Rogue One, is going to be back playing Talos, the Skrull that he played in Far From Home and Captain Marvel. But we have built up this sort of background storyline that Nick Fury isn't on Earth, that he's somewhere hanging out with the Skrulls. We've got this whole sort of thing from the Captain Marvel movie, but we were establishing the Krees and the Skrulls don't like each other. And then there's the whole sword thing that they introduced in WandaVision, which is this organization that is basically about preventing attacks from outer space in the wake of what happened in New York City. So all that to say, the scope of this series could be really cool. And
I am looking forward to this one a lot. I think this could be really cool.
Okay, cool. if they do it right,
yeah,
they don't mess it up.
Yeah, you get the right tone with it.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm trying to think of how to lead into this one. I'm just going to say that there's a new Pixar film coming out called Elemental. I think we talked about the teaser image or something before of, you live in a world where there's fire people and water people. It's going to sound a lot like Avatar, but bear with me. Earth people. And I forgot what the other one was. What did I miss? Fire people. Fire, earth, water, air, cloud people.
Air, yeah.
Yeah.
And the fifth element, don't forget her.
Yeah. And, taking the typical thing of like, what if X had feelings? And think this one's like, what if elements had feelings is probably the design's principle here. And Pixar's making another movie, which, the effects look pretty cool from like graphics shading and style standpoint. Like there's some really impressive stuff shown in the trailers of like, whoa, wow, like that's actually pretty neat that they probably didn't animate that by hand. They probably have had software calculate this. The concern I have about this is when I looked at the character designs and stuff, I said, man, it feels a lot like a sequel to, oh my gosh, what's the one about?
The Emotions one?
Yeah. Oh, I had it in my head.
Yeah.
Yes, Inside Out. Thank you. Which might end up, hurting how people approach this. Like it would be really easy to be casually flipping through a list and not realize that this is a different movie. So I hope they didn't miss the mark on that. But it does look like a, choose your favorite movie here. This, from what I can tell, is somebody said, let's make a kids movie that is either Sidney Poitier's Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, or this is Spike Lee's Jungle Fever. Like choose your one. Choose your race relations metaphor for children. I think that's what's happening here. So I'm down for the story idea. I'm just kind of wondering, like, will this be more like Soul? Like, people enjoyed it, but it wasn't really like a huge
Maybe
hit.
it's West Side Story,
Oh yeah, West Side Story. Yeah, there you go.
Romeo and Juliet. Who knows?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Hansel and Gretel. Oh, no, that's bad image.
Yeah, it looks good. I mean, it looks, there are very few bad Pixar movies, but this one looks really interesting as far as the visuals and stuff. Did you hear about the short that they added to the beginning of this?
I did not.
They have added a short film to the beginning of Elemental, and it is the last performance of Ed Asner as was it Carl Fredrickson?
Yeah.
They were going to include this as part of the Doug Days stuff, but while they were sort of getting ready to run that, Ed Asner passed away, and they decided they wanted to do something bigger to honor him. So they're putting this little sort of 5-6 minute short at the beginning of this movie, and it's called Carl's Date. And it's about how, Carl goes on his first date after losing his wife.
Oh, really? Wow.
Oh.
And it's Ed Asner's last performance. And I thought I think it's very sweet that they decided to make a bigger deal about it than just having his last performance be, the end of a run on Disney Plus. But they're actually going to do this as a little run up to this next Pixar movie. So I thought that was really quite beautiful. And, again, for obviously, Tim, your generation, even mine, Ed Asner is a bloody icon, right? Like this is guy who was, like one of the biggest stars on TV for 25 years, right?
Yep, definitely. So,
yeah. I just saw that. I saw that you had posted this one in Jaime, and I thought, I'll definitely want to tag up on that because I thought that was a really, really sweet little extra thing to entice people to watch that. This one. So Ryan Coogler, director of Black Panther and Wakanda Forever, and of course Creed and all kinds of other good movies, says that he is going to remount. Sorry, he did not say. He is going to remount the X-Files. He's going to try and take a run at the X-Files, and this is according to Chris Carter, who, of course, did the original series.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking to the CBC earlier this week, and he mentioned that I spoke to Ryan Coogler, who's going to remount the X-Files with a diverse cast. he's got his work cut out for him because we covered so much territory. Interesting. I mean, Ryan Coogler's track record is pretty damn good. So, I mean, he makes quality entertainment. So I think that's very encouraging. And I think, obviously, the idea of doing it with more diversity and a more modern setting could be really interesting. People forget, I was not a huge X-Files fan. I watched a handful of it. I know there are people out there who are longtime lovers and watched every single bit of it. I always found it a little bit B-movie. Like, it's not the highest quality. It's sort of somewhere maybe half a notch above Doctor Who, but it's, it's
come on.
It's not great. It's more of it is about like good lighting, good storytelling, and good dramatic tension and good performances than it is about like rubber suit monsters. But when they ever got into those rubber suit monsters things, and again, I can't profess to have seen a ton of it, did not knock my socks off my feet. Now, maybe I only saw a small sample size and it got better, but the idea of doing this in a sort of more modern way and doing it perhaps with the benefits of modern technology and, prosthetics and sounds interesting. I know, Tim, you were more of an X-Files fan. Jaime, were you an X-Files fan?
More casually. I didn't watch week after week, but I'm, somebody who experienced X-Files when it first came out and was at least, related to the culture around it. So I know a fair amount, but not enough to provide serious analysis other than, like, I can understand what you mean about some of it was a little bit B-movie. And it's hard for me to figure out, is that because that's where broadcast television was at in the 90s, especially pre-CGI effects being a cheap and easy way to do things? I'm not sure. Maybe it was also just sort of the tone, right? Because, again, it was broadcast television and not...
it was filmed in British Columbia, which was always rainy and miserable weather, right? Like, generally speaking, I mean, it's a great place to live, but they don't have snow. They get like rain and stuff, but it was best when it was vague and Twilight Zone like, right? But like Jonathan said, when they got into the rubber monster phase of the show, you kind of lost people. But they sort of had these. It was, I don't. Do you ever watch Nightcrawler, John? That was the Darren McGavin.
Oh no, sorry, I was thinking of they did a more recent movie with
Yes, no, I know you, the reporter Jake Gyllenhaal. Yeah, no, there was a TV show called Nightcrawler back in the late 70s, early 80s, I guess, where he was a reporter, and somebody would report, somebody's running around, attacking women and biting their necks, and they get these 2 holes pierced in them, or somebody's, and he would go and investigate these things and try to write these stories, but he would never actually get like face to face with the monster. Like, they were all like monster stories, like, like vampires and werewolves and stuff like that, ghouls of one type or another, but he never actually, all the signs pointed to it, but they never really revealed, they never had a guy in a suit kind of thing. It was sort of like investigate. He was a crime reporter, and his editors didn't believe him, but there were like the people out there who read his article believed him. Kind of, it's called an article when you're not I don't mean an article. What do you call it when you're in newspaper guy has a range of stories?
Series? Column?
Series. Well, his column. That's what I'm looking for, the word column. Like, they would read it. People believed what he was saying. Same thing was true with the X-Files. It had a sort of, like, it was like the very first cut of Alien, the movie Alien. You never really saw the monster. You never saw the guy in the rubber suit. So a lot of it was sort of like a person being attacked, but looking into the camera kind of thing. So it left a lot to your imagination. And X-Files was good that way at the beginning, but they also had it had an interplay between Scully and Mulder too, which was like she was a scientist and didn't believe in it, and he did. Right, Mulder believed that all this stuff was real, and there were extraterrestrials, and and she was like the skeptic. Right, and in reality, the two actors were opposite. But David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson, so there was the dynamic between them, the sort of Diane and the Ted Danson character, Sam and Diane kind of thing, Will they, won't they, whatever. And then they did a movie at the end of it. The movie was really bad. But they had some side characters. They had these sort of conspiracy dudes. like this board of directors who would get together, and it was Cancer Man, which is one of the guys who was like sort of, because their boss didn't believe them either, right?
Yeah.
So it was all that kind of dynamic. Like they never really laid it on the table, and that's when it was more successful. But it had a big. I mean, it was like the show everybody watched, and this was just about before the time when before OJ did his big run on the LA highway. So it was before reality TV kind of took over too, right? Yeah, before the writer's strike and all that stuff, right? So those are big pinnacle changes in television. But yeah, Friday night. X-Files, watched it with the kids,
Yeah, I think that's why I missed out on it, because it sort of had its heyday when I was like 18, 19, 20, and wasn't really around on Friday nights, which weird humble brag, but it's true. I kind of missed out on it. It's back in the day before, like, if you wanted to watch something, you couldn't just watch it on streaming. You basically had to set your VCR to record it, and of course there was no way to go backwards and watch episodes. So if you missed the first little chunk, you're like, well, I guess I'm lost, and I'll just never catch up. And of course, it's a series that went on for, it was like 10 years or something. So
long time.
By the time that it was sort of wrapped up, it was like, now it becomes a little daunting where you're like, damn, I kind of like to catch up, but that's a lot too.
It probably went on about 2 seasons longer than it should have, to be honest with you. Yeah. Right. So we were talking before the show, and it's not going to make it into the episode, but somebody pointed out that we are number 93 in the category of TV and film, this little show called Spotcast. So I don't know, this odd statistic person emailed me about his service, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I thought it was interesting that in France. So merci beaucoup, all the listeners in France. This is where Jonathan and I try our grade school French.
Yes. Allez, bon. Merci.
Yeah, merci beaucoup. Yeah, that's cool. And then the last little piece here before, I don't know if you guys saw this today, but it was just announced that Scott Pilgrim, coming from the producers of the movie, Edgar Wright and gang, is doing an anime series on some new network called Netfly, and I'll probably mispronounce it if I say it. But yeah, starring all the cast from the Scott Pilgrim movie. And one friend of mine commented that he hoped that some of the stories that they kind of glossed over from the original comic book series might come back in. So yeah, I think was it Ramona had they skipped over some Ramona Flowers things, and so yeah, that maybe they'll come back in with this refresh. So it's everybody, it's all the Canadian guy, what's his name, that played Scott?
Sarah?
Yeah, Michael Cera, and all the gang.
I think that's, I saw this, I went to paste it in, you beat me to it. I was like, wow, good for you. But it's, I think that's the part of it that's just like bonkers. Like, this cast clearly bonded over this experience. They loved it. They really enjoyed the experience, and they've stayed, in the story that I pasted in here from Entertainment Weekly, they make a point of saying, like, they're talking to Edgar Wright, and he's like, yeah, we still have an email chain that's like 15 years old. Wow. And we still all email each other through that one chain and stuff. And, some of these have gone on to become some of the biggest stars in the world. We're talking about Chris Evans, Anna Kendrick, Brie Larson, Alison Pill, Aubrey Plaza, Jason Schwartzman. Like, it's a huge list of stars.
Yeah, Superman, Brandon Routh. Yeah,
Kieran Culkin, who's like the star of Succession. Like, it's bonkers. It's bonkers how good this cast was.
Yeah,
and the fact that they're not bringing back like just Michael Cera and Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Scott Pilgrim and Ramona Flowers. They're bringing back everybody, literally everybody. It's amazing that they're going to do this. Yeah. I'm curious to see how they decide to tell this. Is this going to be, a big, stem to stern retelling? Is this going to be new adventures? But you definitely got my attention with this announcement. So I'm super psyched.
Tweet went out 12 hours ago, and it's already got 8,275 retweets.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, this is big news. It's got more. Yeah, it's got 46,000 likes already. It's like as I'm talking about it, that the retweets are going up.
But it's a funny thing, you and I went and saw Scott Pilgrim the other day.
I watched it last week on TV.
Yeah, it is an incredibly rewatchable movie.
Yeah.
It is, at the time, I remember just being blown away. I love the book. I know, again, I crossed paths with Brian a fair bit, Brian Lee O'Malley, who wrote and illustrated it, and obviously lived in Toronto for a long time. He no longer does, but and he's going to be involved in this production. I was a fan of the book before the thing came out. When I found out that it was coming and I found out that Edgar Wright was doing it, I was excited. When I found out he was actually going to stay true to it and really kind of, do that sort of weird sort of mashup of cultures, as well as setting it in Toronto, and I loved it from the second that I saw it. I thought it was a work of genius. I think this is one of Edgar Wright's most underrated projects. And I didn't expect it to be a gangbuster movie just because it is very, very unusual. But I'm really glad that it has really cemented itself as a cult classic. This is one of those movies that, I could come in from the beginning at any point and I know exactly where I am and I could watch any scene over again, and the performances are great and the dialogue is crisp and it's funny and it's fun and I'm so excited they're dipping back into this. It doesn't lend itself easily to a sequel, but the idea of doing something like this is kind of interesting. So yeah.
So I just to sell the point too, like I bought the DVD when it came out, and then it was on that, what was that other server,
Ultraviolet, I think.
Ultraviolet, and that went under, so I lost my digital copy. I mean, it's so good that I went back to Apple and just bought another copy, like on iTunes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even though I watched it on TV, I own it and can watch it anytime I want, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's got Toronto in it, which is really kind of cool.
And it's funny because it captures a Toronto that is now starting to dissipate a little bit.
Yeah.
The Bloor Village stuff in it, and sorry, I mean, we're going to digress into Toronto talk here for a second, but that time period, Honest Ed's, that neighborhood, the Bloor Village, it really is a moment in time too, because that has all been demolished and is now being replaced with condos, and it's becoming kind of gentrified and a little bit dull. But it really kind of captures that moment. It's the old Sonic Boom. Remember the old Sonic Boom, that big old warehouse, record shop and stuff? Like it captures.
Isn't it still there? Sonic Boom?
Sonic Boom moved. It's down. It's on Spadina.
Yeah,
it's on Spadina now. But it used to be up on College Street. No, it was on Bloor. It was just south of Bloor at Bathurst before. But yeah, it was. It's really fun to see this little snapshot of Toronto captured forever too, because it really is a moment, and it's straight out of the book. Like they're at the pizza across the street from Honest Ed's. I sat there and eat a piece of pizza myself. It's such a Toronto thing, and it's so fun to have Toronto be a character, because usually Toronto is hidden in movies.
Or pretending to be Chicago or New York, yeah. Yeah,
and then on the off chance that it actually is Toronto, it's not a character. It's just a place. Yeah. This is the first movie where I feel like Toronto was a character. Yeah. And they're up and they go up to Casa Loma, and, it feels so really Toronto. Yeah. Anyways, that's our little love-in for this. Jaime, are you a fan? I don't know if we've ever talked about this before.
Yeah, I did enjoy the movie. I've never seen any of the other media, so it'll be interesting to watch this. And to your point, like it's like a murderer's row of people, what is it, 13 years later?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how they convinced, the captains, Marvel and America, to show up and rewrite, hey, remember this movie you did a long time ago before you were in multi-billion-dollar movies? But, they probably were able to tell everybody, remember what it was like and how much it was loved. And maybe that was something that sweetened the deal for them.
Yeah. There's a video up on the link to Entertainment Weekly. There's a video on there that has the entire cast doing like a Zoom chat. And so they're all talking. It's everybody. And they're all on there with Brian and with Edgar, and they're having a whole sort of chat. And again, they clearly there was a lot of chemistry in this. And you can tell in the movie, like these people liked each other, that there was a real vibe there. And I think that's one of the reasons it makes it so enjoyable. But it's not common. And we talked about this, I think, related to Firefly, right? Like sometimes casts just come together and it's just this perfect fit. And I think this is the same circumstance. But I mean, I really mean, I should look it up. We will do it for our fact check next week. But the whoever did the casting for this, I'm sure Edgar was part of it, but I'm sure there was probably a very talented casting director as well. But like, you're right, Jaime, Murderers Row, like this was everybody before they were about to break. Like so many talented people that have gone on to huge things. It's crazy.
Do you know, in our episode of January 2022, we talked about a Scott Pilgrim series in the works.
Yeah. Well, and they've done, some spin-off-y stuff. They did the video game adaptation, which you can play. That's like this great 8-bit sort of Double Dragon-esque kind of beat-em-up game and stuff. Like there's an enduring fandom around this. They actually just put out in the last half year, they just put out some really nice action figures of Scott and Ramona. I don't think they've done anybody else, but that look like the comic book versions, and they look fantastic. Like there's definitely an enduring love for this, both as a book, as a movie, game, and for these actors. So yeah, I think this is exciting. This is really exciting.
Cool. I'm glad you're happy.
I am happy.
Alrighty. Well, we're at the main part of the show where we talk about something Star Trek related. This week it is Star Trek Picard, Season 3, Episode 7, Dominion. Not mainly because of the meat.
That's a Canadian joke. That's a Canadian joke.
The other Dominion, yeah. So, yeah, we'll dig in with, I guess, our elevator pitches first. Mm-hmm. What do you got?
My elevator pitch was a pretty succinct one. Man, sometimes the Federation just sucks.
Okay.
I mean, in this episode, like, we were trying to figure out, like, what's the motivation? Why is this sort of rogue faction of changelings so hell-bent on messing with the Federation on this scale, messing with Starfleet on this scale, and why are they trying to sort of get to it? Here, we finally get the whole data download from Vatic, who says, hey, here's my deal. During the Dominion War, they captured a bunch of us and they held us in our test tubes and they tortured the holy crap out of us. And, man, like, I get there's a Section 31. I get that there's, of course, you're naive if you think your government isn't doing awful things that they aren't telling you about. But, I don't think it goes as far as making them empathetic villains, but I kind of get their point.
Yeah, well, but then again, it's also that second contact thing that we talked about, when we talked about Lower Decks, where, the Federation goes off, does this thing, gives the whoever a solution, and then leaves, right? And in this case, Picard and I guess it was Voyager at the time. Was it Voyager that was? Oh, Deep Space Nine, right? Deep
Space Nine, yeah.
Yeah, they have this big war with them. They come to a resolution. They solve it by creating this virus that, is going to infect them, but gives them a cure.
Well, not really. Not really.
No, I mean, yeah, they say as far as Picard knows, they gave him a cure because he didn't bother to check and follow up to make sure that the FedEx didn't get lost on the way there, kind of thing. Or get circumvented, as she sort of says in the story here, right? So, yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's that same sort of like, well, we like typical government kind of answer. We gave you the funding. Why did you, waste it on toilets instead of fresh water?
Yeah.
Anyway, another Canadian joke. What was your pitch, Jaime?
I went with the crew's having trouble with their backed up data. Meanwhile, Vadic's boss is a handful.
Backed up data. I told you last week when you restore stuff doesn't always come back, right?
Exactly.
That's the epitome of corrupt data.
They had a merged conflict, right, Jaime? And they chose the wrong branch. Or the wrong commit. That's an more than just code joke. Yeah, I didn't have a pitch for this one. Just like, again, second contact, I'll just say. Cool. So if we talk about our pew-pews, because my favorite pew-pew in this show, I mean, there was lots of really cool gunplay and stuff like that, but the pew-pew for me was Seven versus Tuvok.
Yeah, good call.
The very first conversation, because it starts with Tim Russ reprising Tuvok, and Seven and the gang and the Titan are hiding. They're hiding in a pile of garbage, which they stole from Star Wars. I mean, I just got to say, but they're hanging out in this graveyard for ships, and they're having these secret conversations, and Seven's talking to Tuvok, and she's as she's talking to him, she's testing him too, right? And they're scanning his voice to see whether it's legit or not. And I think at one point they notice there's a blip, and then she catches him in a couple of falsehoods around her relationship with Tuvok, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is weird, because when did they ever cross paths? Oh no, yes, they were on the same ship, right?
Yeah, they're on the same ship. Yeah.
They were on Voy. And then, of course, for me, the Easter egg was the Voyager theme started playing at one point in that conversation.
Yeah, I jokingly had in my head to, and he's not Tuvok, he's Who Are You Vok?
Or T-Vix, what was that other character called?
Yeah, Tuvix, yeah.
Tuvix, yeah.
Yeah,
that would have been funny if they tried to pass off Tuvix as
what? This is what I look like. What are you doing?
This is what's in the record. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good though, because we did get a little bit of important data download in there, which is that they're not necessarily killing the people they replace. That's kind of why they had somebody as important as Tuvok in this scene. And it got fun to see Tim Russ again. But I think the whole point was, it's supposed to be them reaching out to try and get connected to any of the people they think can help them, but then also getting the data back that, you must have gotten some information from Tuvok, which means he's alive, and so we know that we're not necessarily killing every single person that they take control of, which is good, because we were also potentially facing that. Are they killing off all these potentially famous characters, especially because they keep mentioning
these spin-off properties, you mean? Yeah.
Well, they keep mentioning Janeway, which is a little, you kind of wonder if we're going to see her. It seems like this is meant to be not just Picard, the final hurrah.
Well, we know where Janeway is. She's chasing her in Prodigy.
That's right. But yeah, no, it's good that we knew this was going to be a TNG reunion, sort of last farewell for the crew kind of deal. We that's what we kind of got as the bargain for this series. But it's kind of turned into an all of previous Trek iterations kind of one, because we have gotten a little bit of connection to DS9. We certainly have got more than our share of Voyager in here. And, I'd be surprised at this point with 3 episodes to go if we don't see Janeway at some point.
Or Reg Barkley. Can dare to dream.
You're holding on to that really hard.
Maybe he's the big bad. You don't know.
Yeah.
He's the one with a revenge claim, right?
That's true. It's true. He could be the one who's out for blood. But for my pew pew pew, I had the trap scene. I thought that was really well done, where they sort of lure the changelings on board, and then they start trapping them. And then, of course, it starts to come apart when Lore sort of takes over and starts messing things up. But I did like the sort of the sequence of them sort of trying to catch them all, and it just reminded me of old time Trek, right? Like, that's a very Trek thing. Like, bring them in here and then catch them between 2 force fields, but the force fields are starting to fade. Like, it just felt like a real warm and comfy feeling.
Yeah, it's a trash compactor scene too, though.
Yeah. Jaime, did you have anything different for your pew pew pew?
No, my pew 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 was the gun battle on the Titan, and my Easter egg was Tuvok kind of, and how this is increasingly, with the TNG characters, which we expected, the Voyager characters, DS9 characters. It's sort of a multi-backdoor pilots kind of thing where they could go in a lot of different directions, and I think people are pretty jazzed for it, just given the reception to season 3 of Star Trek Picard.
Yeah. The other thing I had for my Easter eggs was the Tuvok, obviously, is an easy one. But they do make reference to the fact that, they've danced around Odo a few different times in this series, and just, touching back on what a great character he was. Odo, of course, steals the cure and brings it back to the Great Link to save his people. That
was actually a story in the show, right?
Okay. Yeah, they dance around it. They never actually say specifically Odo, but they say one of us, had to go steal the cure. And again, it's Vadic bringing that back to Picard, saying, you only think that you gave us the cure. You didn't give us the cure. We stole the cure. And it was really because Odo had, they wanted to save his people. It's funny because I think this is maybe the 3rd time that they've referenced Odo without saying the word Odo, which is kind of a shame, because that was an indelible character. And Barcelona's character was such an icon. Of course, he's passed on, so he couldn't come back to reprise his role or anything. But it's nice that he's getting so many little love pieces in here, little ties in. Again, it's funny because we talked about it, as a TNG love in, but you really kind of need all three of those series. Not as much the original series or the original animated series or anything like that, but you really kind of need all three of TNG and Voyager and DS9 to really get every bit of, like, every layer of what they're doing here.
Yeah, and Odo was originally like an orphan, where he didn't know about the Great Link initially, right?
No, he did. He thought he was sort of a one-off. They just found him floating in space, right? And then he thought he was mimicking the look of the scientist that was working with him, but it turned out that he was actually just looking like his people. Although I thought that was a bit of a cop-out, but
yeah.
But yeah, it's I would like at some point in the next 3 episodes for somebody to use the word Odo, just because I think he deserves it.
Right. Yeah, true.
My big question was, so one of the things they sort of slipped into this episode, which was otherwise, it moved pretty fast and not a lot going on. There's the whole, data lore thing. There's the invasion of the ship thing. There's the whole conspiracy thing. They slip in the whole, Jack and Picard don't necessarily have aromatic syndrome, which is something we've known about since the TNG days, that Picard had this thing that was going to potentially be fatal, and that a couple episodes they established a couple episodes ago that Jack also has it, and that's how they sort of explain away that he's having these sort of visions and episodes and stuff like that.
Right.
And then Vadic in this episode basically says, like, no, you don't. And so it begs back the question, like, she seems to know a lot about Jack that has something to do with more than just, we need your DNA so that we can, reanimate this Picard corpse and make it do our bidding. So the question is, what's Jack? What is Jack? Is Jack a changeling? Is Jack a hybrid? Did Crusher sleep with a changeling instead of Picard?
I was going to say, but wouldn't Crusher kind of remember Jack coming into this
was the
world?
Changeling in the form of a condom with a hole in it during their night of love? Like, what? I just that's the part I'm a little confused about. How, if he is their child,
I bet you it was the midichlorians. The midichlorians again. I'm telling you.
Darth Plagueis the Wise needs to get up out of people's business. This is clearly a problem.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know. Do you guys have any theories? Do you have any thoughts on, like, he keeps having these weird visions with, like, the red stuff creeping up the walls, and of course he can read minds in this episode. He's reading Sydney's mind
and manipulating her and telling her what to do. Right?
Yeah. He basically takes control over her.
Master,
yeah.
I'm really lost on, and that was my big question as well. What is Jack Crusher? Because before they mentioned the aromatic syndrome stuff, I was going down the path of, like, maybe he is, changeling enabled in some way as, like, a hybrid or pure changeling. And it sort of went in a different direction where they said, turns out maybe you got, like, an alien baby inside of you, Picard. That's actually what's been throwing off the scans. I don't know where it's going to go. It's like, one last middle finger from Q. I was like, they left a baby behind, like, who knows? It could go in a million different directions with that.
Yeah. Some good quotes this week. I like the one from Alondra when they first turned the data lore body on, and she says, "So has lore always been this arch?" Yeah. I thought that was a great, like, very young person thing to say about this, like, kind of arch villainy kind of mwahaha character that they created in lore. I thought it was funny too, because Geordi uses the line. He says, why they say, why is he doing this? And he says, chaos. He loves chaos, which is funny because then they counter that later on with lore saying survival. Like, it's I want to survive. It's not about chaos, which is I never really got the impression for him it was about survival. I think Geordi's reading is probably fairer. So, maybe that's just Lore's trying to justify it, or trying to justify that character's behavior. But yeah, chaos, I thought it was a great way to describe what Lore brings to the mix. And then Vadic had some killer lines in this one. And again, like, an amazing performance once again. But how remarkable is it that an enlightened species can ignore each other's pain? That was a great one. The Federation took my family, now I will take yours. Also pretty dark. This was this is my winner for this episode. What defense is formidable against the formless? I thought that was whoever wrote that. Bravo, that's poetry. That's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, I got lazy and decided I didn't want to write down all of Lore's spicy and convoluted quotes, but he's got some great zingers talking about like you got to go more arch to deal with the hubris that's in front of you when you deal with the TNG crew.
Yeah. No, you're right. There was a few really good ones. I mean, it's funny because, obviously we love Brent Spiner playing Data, iconic performance, all-timer. But it's been a long time since we've seen him play Lore. Like, Lore got boxed up, season 5, 6? I think it was beginning of season 6 of TNG. So we're talking like 92, maybe 93 was the last time we saw him play this character. It's a long time.
Yeah.
And it's fun. He's fun in that character role. He's good at it.
Yeah, and it's interesting how his face changes, and you can tell that he's Lore too, which is really a really interesting portrayal.
Oh, he's just got that great smirk, that sort of sneering smirk.
Well, because Data doesn't smile like that. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, fun.
Well, even when he's the human, his the older brother or whatever his name is, what's the name we mentioned last week?
Alden.
Alden, yeah. He kind of has he kind of does that sort of smirk too when he's talking. That sort of very sarcastic looking face too, right? But yeah, no, it's definitely different when he's Lore. Maybe it's the way they light his face too. That might be different too.
Yeah,
it's good. Good show.
Yep. It's funny because this is like a very much a Data download episode, pardon the pun, where we kind of catch up on motivations and all that kind of stuff. But the whole thing happens. It's a little bodily, right? Like it's basically but inside the ship. They don't go anywhere. That stay in the same place. They're at the same place at the beginning of the episode and the end of the episode. So it, on one hand, it feels like a lot happened, and the other hand, it just was just about a Data dump for you.
Well, it ends though with the changelings taking over the ship, right?
Yes. I suppose that's the big dun dun.
And the old trope of you don't disrupt your stars. I can never understand. It's kind of like I was watching a movie the other day where somebody explained the reasons why they're doing something, like the enemy, the bad guy, and the person says, "Why are you telling me this?" He says, "It's basically part of the storytelling. I have to say this, like, but it's kind of like like when they walk onto the bridge and the guy's holding the phaser against Seven's head, and they walk slowly on the bridge, and everybody kind of somebody's got a phaser pointing at them, but they don't kill anybody, right? Because they need them for next week, right?
Yep.
For the turnaround.
We'll just put them in the pit with the sharks. We'll just close the doors.
Like
it's
Austin
fine.
Powers' son,
Seth Green. Yeah,
Seth Green's role. Just kill him. I've got a gun in my room. I'll bring it.
We'll do it together. It'll be a family bonding thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. There we go. Right. Should we move on to the Mandalorian?
Hell yeah.
So yeah, we didn't talk about this last time, but like this guy's like he reminds me of Pizza the Chia Pet.
Pizza the Hut mixed with. Do you remember Fraggle Rock? Tim, you must be old enough to remember Fraggle Rock.
Yes.
The trash pile. Trash pile.
Oh yeah, or he looks like a chia pet. Can't take him seriously. He's like organically green or something, right?
The part that I can't take is that everybody takes the time in this series to continually call him Pirate King Gory Shard. Like, who does
that?
The
full title. Yeah, the full title.
Like, gotta give him his dues. He is the Pirate King. Like, they couldn't just call him, like, the King or Shard or Gorian. Like, no. Yeah. At least 8 or 10 times in this episode, they say the full phrase, Pirate King Gorian Shard, and they've done that this whole season, and it is just a tub of cheese. It is so cheesy.
Yeah.
Nobody talks like that.
Yeah. As they're running around like trying to save their lives, and they managed to get the whole title in there exactly.
Yeah.
That guy, the Chia Pet guy. That's what we should call him, right?
I mean, what did you have for your pitch?
I was in a cheeky mood in this one, I guess, because I wrote down here, pirates take over the local Sbarros, so the Mando cops get called in to help. So I was in a mood, apparently.
Yeah.
Not saying it's great. Not saying it stuck the landing, but it tried.
Yeah. I feel you. I just went with blah, 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 Pirate King, blah, 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 the way. Who cares? Zeb is back.
Yeah, well, I was going to say too, like my Easter egg was the purple guy talking to Papa San, because I couldn't remember the purple guy's name, right?
Yeah, Zeb.
Zeb, yeah. And of course, Papa San is actually Captain Carson Teva, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's really all. Like, I mean, it was sure, it blew up good, but really, that's all I kept thinking about the whole episode was like, oh my god, we finally got Zeb in live action. That's all that mattered to me. As you guys know, I am a diehard Rebels head. It's my favorite of the animated properties. It's one of my favorite Star Wars things ever. And Zeb is one of my favorite characters. So he leaned over when was it Carson Teva? Paul Sun Young Lee sidles up to the bar, and he. If you look in that scene, there's a whole bunch of other cameos too. There's also you can see Dave Filoni's in the bar. You can see there's some of the other creators are like that's how they've been basically slipping people in as these pilots and stuff. So there's other people in the bar, and you're sort of looking around, and then you see this Lasat come over, this alien come over and sort of lean over. And my first thought was like, okay, we know from Rebels that there aren't a lot of Lasats, let alone Lasats who leave their planet. Mm-hmm. So my first thought was like, well, is it Zeb or is it supposed to just be a Lasat? And of course, in this era, we don't really know because we last saw the Lasats in Rebels, and even in that point, Zeb is theoretically going back to his home planet with what was the other character's name? The guy who defected, who may or may not be in love. There's kind of an allusion to the fact that they're kind of in love with one another. Yeah. But we didn't really know what was going on. So I was excited when I saw it. I was like, oh my god, that's a Lasat. That's amazing. And it looked great. Like it was not a crap effect. Like, it's always the worry when they take a cartoon character and they bring it into the live action. Obviously, this is a cartoon also, but at the same time, it looked great. And I was like, oh my god, is that Zeb? Oh my god, is that
totally
Zeb?
Recognizable. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And I looked at it and I was like, and then I heard the voice and I'm like, it sounds like Zeb. Sounds like Steve Blum, I think, is the actor who plays Zeb. And I looked and of course once the episode was over, I scanned the credits and sure enough, it was the same voice actor and that was listed as Zeb. So yeah, that's again most exciting thing that's happened this entire season for me is they really do seem like they're getting the band back together from Rebels between Mandalorian and potentially the Ahsoka series. We know we're going to get Sabine Wren. I think we have high hopes that we're going to kind of get most of that in live action, and I can't tell you how excited I am about that. And again, there's a reason why I'm not talking about how great Gorian Shard was and the plan to attack Navarro and the Mandalorians coming to the rescue and all that other stuff. This is fine. But the development, this was the first episode where I felt like we're moving things forward, and I was excited by that.
I mean, the pew pew was really good. I mean, the battle on the planet was kind of interesting, and we were also talking about the money that gets sunk into the special effects, even the shots of Navarro, like just as the ship was flying over and carpet bombing the citizens, right? That scene alone was an expensive scene, and it wasn't just a matte painting, right?
Yeah,
cool. Good. It was a good episode. I mean, typical. And it's funny that what is it, like 15 Mandalorians could take on an entire battalion that of pirates, I guess. I don't know how many pirates they brought, but and the pirates are all hammered, right?
Yeah, that probably helped.
Yeah,
it's like a special forces crew going in, right? This is like America has Delta Force and the Navy SEALs. I don't know what other countries have, but like imagine them against, as you mentioned, drunken pirates who are kind of just along for the ride and not necessarily well trained, and as we saw with the snub fighters, not necessarily very disciplined either, right? Like they were told, "Hey, come back, protect the ship." It's like, no, we got beef with Mando, so let's take him out.
Mm-hmm.
Not exactly the best strategy there. not the best strategy they've ever brought.
Right. They fell apart exactly as the Mandalorians wanted them to fall apart, right? Split, divide and conquer them.
Yeah.
My quote, and I didn't write the exact quote, it was more the feeling I got from Paz Vizsla, where he, he's the next person to talk at the Council of Elders, I guess, when everybody's got the talking hammer.
The stand-up, you
the
mean,
talking
right?
hammer, yeah.
Yeah,
the stand-up.
Yeah. And he does if you've seen any Simon Cowell from American Idol or America's Got Talent, it's kind of a thing he does fairly recently, which is to say, I didn't like that act. And then people start booing. He's like, I loved it. And we had that sort of moment here where it's like, I suffered and our people died for this foundling. So why do we do this again? And you're like, oh man, look, this dude's causing beef. And he says, because we're Mandalorians and that's what we do. I was like, oh, all right. This kind of took a left turn I didn't expect here, but all right, this is good. This is positive. Right. So yeah, that was my sort of meta quote about him.
Yeah. Yeah, there was some good stuff in here that I laughed. I'm sure you both got it as well. But the very beginning of the episode when Gorian Shard shows up and says to Grief Karga, oh, and you gunned down my troops, and it was brutal fashion. You murdered them in cold blood. And he says he shot first. I was like, yep, yep, he shot first. That's it's nice to have Dave Filoni in on the joke that. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Filoni and Favreau are in on the joke. He shot first. Yep.
Right.
And then, there's the other part we haven't really talked about in this is the whole Moff Gideon. We talked about it a few weeks ago. There was this sort of dropped line in the episode focusing on Dr. Pershing about, well, I hear that Moff Gideon escaped. And then in this episode, we get the whole truth of it. So Tiva says, I'm hearing Moff Gideon never made it to trial. And of course, it comes back around at the end of the episode and we see the discovery of the shuttle and that Moff Gideon has in fact escaped, which makes sense because then you factor in, okay, so somebody bombed Bo-Katan's base. That could be Moff Gideon. Is Gideon working for Thrawn? That's a different, matter. But, this felt like we were moving things forward. It feels like the last few episodes have kind of been slow paced, all things being equal, especially for an 8-episode season. For the first half of the season was a little slow. So yeah, that was kind of good. And then that Tiva's line when he goes in and he sees Tim Meadows playing the bureaucrat on Coruscant, and he says, "There's something dangerous going on out there. All these events, it's not a coincidence, and by the time it becomes big enough for you to act, it'll be too late." Which again is great foreshadowing. So, what did you make of the interaction between the armorer and Bo-Katan at the end of the episode?
Yeah, the helmet thing. It
tells her to take her helmet off.
Yeah, because she looks at her and goes, "What now?"
Yeah, and basically says, "Do you respect me?" And she says,
"Are we all taking our helmets off now? What's going on?" Yeah.
Yeah, and so she comes out without her helmet on, and people are immediately like, "How come she gets to take her helmet off?" And she says, "Well, she walks between worlds, and therefore she's allowed to do this." It's kind of a strange, convenient way to sort of do this. Does the armor have sort of supreme authority? Is she their spiritual leader, so she can change the rules of the cult? Is that the deal?
I guess, yeah. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking, like, when's the armorer going to take her helmet off? And Well, I mean, again, Emily Swallows, the actress who plays the armorer, is a very striking, beautiful woman. It seems like you'd hope at some point that they would let them do that, and not to mention the fact that we have a whole series based around Pedro Pascal, who we've seen for a grand total of, what do you guys think, like half an hour, maybe 40 minutes over 3 seasons we've seen his face? Yeah, it was interesting too. I was reading somewhere that there was a stand-in as well, so I was kind of thinking because sometimes some of the times when Bo-Katan was talking and just the way her body movement, got to be Katie Sackhoff in there, but because just the kind of way she moved her shoulders as she said what she was going to say. But then again, like, how do we know that these aren't all just stand-ins, right?
Yeah. Well, and we do know that to a certain extent. That's kind of been a running gag that Pedro Pascal doesn't put the armor on for every single episode. They do have like a stunt performer in the uniform, and they also have like just a walking around person too. But yeah, I mean, I wonder how much of this he actually did on scene versus how much of it he did just in a voice studio doing the voices and stuff. But if you're going to cast somebody like him, maybe let's see him from time to time. He's a quite good looking man and also quite good performer.
I think that ultimately is the reason why she was took her helmet off, right? Was for the fan service, right?
Yeah, well, and again, like Katie Sackhoff's a beautiful woman too. It's nice to see her, and hopefully, I mean, her wig is kind of hilarious this season, but it's nice to see her, and I hopefully we'll sort of see that. And interesting that the whole sort of idea now is basically the armorer is telling her, like, go collect our people and let's get this going. We wondered why she didn't really have a reaction last week to the whole mythosaur reveal from Bo-Katan. It turns out she was kind of just sort of stewing on it and waiting for the right moment to sort of say, okay, here's what I'm thinking. And so now it sounds like what their intention is to go reunite the rest of the Mandalorians. So the characters we met previously, like Casca Reeves and Axe Woves and the ones that were with Bo-Katan the first time, and sort of bring the whole band back together, and then maybe go back to Mandalore and see if they can find a mythosaur.
Yeah, that did come up this time through the mythosaur, right?
At some point in the future of this series, probably not for a couple of seasons at least, there's going to be like a mythosaur riding Bo-Katan riding a mythosaur, or Din Djarin, or the Armorer, or Grogu, or something is going to be riding a mythosaur into battle against the forces of Thrawn or Gideon or all of the above or something like this. This is all eventually going to happen, right?
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Personally, I'm hoping for Grogu.
Yeah. I likened the Armorer's take on this. So if we assume she's their spiritual leader in some sort of way, at the very least, she's got that special place as the person who knows how to run the forge and everything, right? Making it akin to some, as of now, real world stuff that is happening for Catholics. The Pope has said that he might change. I think it's like 1,000 years long policy that, like, maybe priests will be allowed to marry, which is a big change, kind of akin to, wait a minute, you can take your helmet off. It's like, well, under these circumstances for this person, right? And the armorer didn't take her own helmet off, right? She didn't include herself in this, so she clearly believes there's something special related to seeing Bo-Katan seeing the mythosaur. And maybe it'll sort of pass a bit as well with the other Mandalorians. We're like, well, she did get cleansed in the waters on Mandalore, and she did follow our ways, at least for a while.
But she wasn't supposed to take her helmet off until
Yeah, and she didn't have to follow that stuff. She kind of went into somebody else's church or synagogue or mosque and like sort of jazzed hand along this, like everybody else knew what to do and she didn't know, right? So I wonder if there's sort of that aspect to it as well. It's like it's easier to sell because this person has been living our ways when they really were not required to in any sort of way.
Yeah. Well, this is giving me optimism for the last 3 episodes that maybe we're going to pick up the pace and see a little more. This was a slightly longer episode. We've been getting ones that were tight little 31, 32 minute episodes. This one was up above 40 minutes. So again, if you're gonna go small on the early ones, that hopefully means you're gonna go bigger on the later ones. So hopefully we'll get a little bit more and a little bit more action, a little bit more sort of development as we get into the home stretch here.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Speaking of the home stretch,
the finale, 2-part finale of The Bad Batch. Star Wars The Bad Batch, Season 2, Episode 15 and 16, The Summit, and then followed by Plan 99.
Mm-hmm.
All at once.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and read my elevator pitch.
Okay.
Which will make me sound like a bit of a dick, but here we are. I told you so, I told you so, I told you, I told you so, I told you so, I told you so. Also, RIP to someone from the batch, but yeah, I think I did call this last week. That, I said that the best way to continue this story and to make it logical would be to have them lose Omega and have to go rescue her the next season, and that's exactly what they did.
Yeah. I mean, you got a pitch?
It was simply the heist, because that was sort of what they were doing, right? It was a heist movie, essentially.
Yeah. And then they ran into the Saul Guerrera again in this one, right?
He was my Easter egg hunt that... he's certainly been around quite a bit, but he pops in from time to time to essentially have a completely different viewpoint on what everybody else is looking to do at the time. right? We saw his insistence. He's a pretty particular kind of rebel or terrorist, right? That he's okay with getting his own nose bloodied as long as he can bloody the other side, whereas some of the other folks that he's dealt with are like, no, that's not going to help long term. You can pew 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 and blow up these guys here, but they're just going to get filled with, restocked with new people. Like you haven't actually solved the problem. We have a better, longer term solution. He's not having any of that. He'll take his short term wins where he can get them.
Yeah, he really is the poop in the punch bowl in some of these ways, right? Like he basically says like, no, I'm going to do this thing. You guys can't stop me. And then when it goes sideways, not only does he not complete his mission, but he completely screws things up. And, any way you look at it, he causes the death of one of the Bad Batch, right? Like they end up blowing the base. It ends up screwing things up. It ends up stranding them there, at which point they get attacked, at which point, Tech dies. But
he's not really a rebel. I mean, like if you look at him in Rogue One, he's he's more of a piratey kind of guy, right?
Well, he's definitely fighting he's fighting against the Empire. So by that proxy or by that cause, he is a rebel. But he is very much more like a guerrilla fighter, right? Like he's just much more focused on hurting the Empire than fixing things. Like his is more about creating chaos, destroying things. I mean, they even say that in this episode. They're like, he's like, I'm going to take out the command center and kill these people. And they're like, what good is that going to do? They'll just fill all their spots within the next week. You're not really doing anything. Whereas what we're trying to do could have long-term effects. And he's like, he can't see that, right? He's just focused on like, no, I want them to hurt. I want them to feel it. And you see that through his whole arc through, Clone Wars and all the way through all the series, that he's a much more passionate person. He's very, very scarred by losing his sister, and he just wants them to hurt as much as he hurts. And that's the bottom line on all of his stuff is how bad can I hurt them? How quickly can I hurt them?
Right.
I had a couple good Easter eggs. So the one was the part where the Marauder and the Bad Batch or Clone Force 99 are approaching the planet, and they have to transmit the clearance codes, and then they can get down to Tarkin's world. I definitely felt like that was very much meant to echo the scene where the Han Solo and the Tydirium shuttle are trying to approach Endor, the moon of Endor. Even the sound effects were the same. Some of the dialogue felt very similar. I was like, that's some pretty good like echoing. It felt very deliberate. And then the other one was, at the meeting where they have Tarkin and these other sort of major players in the thing, they start talking about Commander Krennic is there, and give us an update on Project Stardust, which is of course the Death Star, right? So that was kind of a cool, another sort of tie into the Rogue One, A New Hope kind of, bringing it all together. I almost.
Yeah, I was going to say also the echoing for me was the whole sister connection, which we can talk about in a few minutes anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I did find myself thinking about the envy that I have for someone who exists, I'm going to say maybe a decade from now, not too far into the future, but somebody who could come into Star Wars with everything at their feet, all these television series, all the cartoon series, the original movies, and really see all of the ways that they've bound them all together and sort of all these little connections and stuff like that. For us, they're like, oh, I remember that. And that's, of course, they're giving you member berries, right? They're just like giving you these little things that you remember. But to have somebody come at it and be like, oh, this is how it all pieces together. Of course, that person knows that person. Of course, that person should be there at that point. Like they really are trying to sort of just bridge all these gaps that have existed for so long. And they're trying to sort of, like Dave Filoni seems like his personal mission to rehabilitate first the prequel trilogy and now the sequel trilogy. So it's interesting. It's interesting how this is all coming together.
I mean, but Asimov did that too. Like in his writing, like he started in the 50s and with the Foundation series, and then they started developing the robot books, and then he went back and did the prequel, right? He did a prequel to the Foundation. I think it literally was called that. And then at the end of it, the end of the whole robot story ties the robots and the Foundation together, right? So he did that over like 10 novels. So same sort of idea. You can you can approach it now. You can start reading Asimov, and even though they're all like, it's funny because like the Foundation is written like a very much like a 50s pulp fiction kind of story, pulp science fiction, like in the same way that New Hope is very much a 1970s movie, as opposed to that's why George Lucas kept wanting to go back and mess with it to try and make it update all the special effects and stuff. But, like you say, like now that, 10 years from now, you can look back at this whole arc and see the connections, right?
Yeah.
In the same sense.
For sure. So let's get into it in our questions here. The first one is Tech really dead? And couldn't they clone him? That, I guess, I think he's dead. I think he's dead. Do you guys have a sense of whether he's for really dead? I mean, anytime they kill a character off screen, you're a little dubious, right?
Yeah, but all they could find was his glasses, right?
Yeah, but that's Hemlock, right? Hemlock's trying to get inside Hunter's head at that point. Like,
right, yeah.
If they had him and they were like, doing research on him, or if they had him and they had him as a prisoner or whatever, like they'd never...
He did fall quite a ways, though.
He did fall quite a ways. That's true.
I mean, he lost his gun that had the harpoony thing. It's funny, it's funny that the one scene where he jumps over to the, across the chasm to get to the other side, he jumps over and grabs with his hands, and when he jumps back, he uses the tether thing. So why wouldn't he use the tether thing the first time?
Yeah. Speed, I guess. Jaime, yes, dead.
That's a good question because, even Darth Maul came back, right? And
he was chopped in half, right?
Yeah. So it's like, well, possible. And it might be interesting to tie it to my quote because I wrote down, this was the interaction between Fee and Tech, where she says, hey, so you were just going to leave without saying anything? And Tech says, that is correct. And then there's these awkward beats. Did you require a briefing? It's just like, wow,
Get a clue, dude.
Yeah. And so it does make me wonder if he is actually gone, and that, ends up being a semi-unresolved thing that they can explore with Fee, right? Of like, at least I got a chance to say something with him and say goodbye, because otherwise this dude would have just been gone and then he would have told me he's dead, So I don't know. These episodes.
Yeah, why would they go through the process of saying that part, right? Other than to maybe humanize the character, the Fee character, right? Well, why would they make that a story point?
Yeah, I think the whole point is that there's supposed to be, they do that so often in Hollywood script writing. Like, unfortunately, it is that foreshadowing thing. Sometimes done well, sometimes in this case, perhaps not quite as well done. I have a theory, and maybe let's get into the sisters stuff before I sort of drop that one out there. But so, yes, there's the Fee sort of not sure what's happening with that one. Then later in the episode, right at the end, there's this reveal that the Emery Carr character, so the scientist who we've seen in multiple episodes as the sort of assistant to Dr. Hemlock, turns out at the end of the episode, she basically says to Omega, "Don't you recognize me? I'm your sister." And so there's that sort of dun dun dun. How did this work? How does this fit in? I don't think it's an accident that she looks so much like Tech.
Oh, really?
I don't like she wears the same glasses.
With the glasses, yeah.
She has a sort of somewhat similar demeanor as far as being a little more,
less emotional.
Less emotional, sure. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
More like I was thinking as he's getting on the ship at the beginning of the series. It's a bit like Sheldon in that he's unaware of
he seems to be almost an avatar for people on the autistic spectrum, right? Like he seems to be like a little unable to read the emotions of other people and stuff like that, and very much focused on what he finds interesting. And as a parent to a child who is on the autistic spectrum, I found that very identifiable. But I don't think it's a coincidence that she reminds me so much of Tech. I have a suspicion that the way that they're going with this is that as it plays out over next season, eventually Emery Carr will replace Tech on the Bad Batch, and maybe even Fee, because it is a bit of a male-centric group. They have Omega, of course. She's a little girl. They don't really have a female dynamic. I think adding those two to the Bad Batch to sort of replenish after the death of Tech makes sense.
Yeah.
Because if they come back from that mission and they go back to the planet and they say, hey, we're ready to retire, things have gone bad for us or whatever, they end up going back to the Paradise planet that they were on, and they tell her, hey, Tech died, and you'd think she's going to be like, to hell with that, I'm joining the fight, right?
Yeah. Unless she doesn't end up like that Private Velasquez from Aliens,
Yeah.
For me, I had this note here that, I think that this show is trying to sort of, bridge that sort of gap between, some of it's for the kiddos, it's kid friendly. And some of it is like, oh, okay, like, their parents can be watching with them and be like, oh, there you go. There's Krennic. Oh, look, there's Saw Gerrera, like stuff that the kiddos may not catch. And let's assume that Tech is permanently gone here. The, Tech is gone aspect of this, and in making sure that Omega understands that like we can't go back for him. He didn't make it. Going with that explanation with the child makes this feel like this is an afternoon special that you chase it with some Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, right? And you learn your kids real young that like sometimes the good guys don't come back. It feels like a learning moment for them that I think, to the show's credit, is a bit more than some of the episodic hijinks that they've gotten into. Like they're leading somewhere, which is nice.
Yep. Yeah,
what's the intended audience for this show though? Like, is it meant to be like teenage, young adult kind of?
I would have said teen tweens. Teen tweens would have been like about as low as you'd want to go, because it's not bloodless, and it's certainly not violent. I don't know. I mean, I would have said I feel comfortable with a kid who is like double digits at least, 10, 12, something like that, before I'd want them to getting into this. Like it can be a little intense. Mm-hmm. It's funny because Clone Wars ostensibly was created for a younger audience. But as that series went on, there were certainly episodes that were pretty psychologically heavy. Like, I don't know that I feel comfortable with a smaller child watching them. Like some pretty upsetting stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
But good quotes, not great. This show's never like the best for quotes, but there's some good stuff in there. Tech's final sign-off line, "When have we ever followed orders?" Oh, that was a great one. I love Tech's succinct lines. "This is not ideal." That was great. I love just, yeah, absolutely. Saw Gerrera, the most Saw Gerrera line ever. "Sacrifices have to be made for the greater good." That's his mentality, right? Like, so what if you lose some people? So what if some clones die? Like, I'm doing what I'm doing. "The galaxy has changed and so have we. It's time to put being soldiers behind us for good, Hunter." That's what he says before Omega is taken. And then after she's taken, "We are going to get her back, and we don't stop searching until we do." So that's the sort of sign-off line.
Mm-hmm.
And that's your basically your, tagline for season 3. "We are going to get her back, and we don't stop searching until we do."
Yeah.
I love that they go to Ord Mantell and then are like surprised when Sid screws them over. Like,
yeah,
that was the kind of the like WTF moment of this episode. Like, she was essentially and not veiled threatening them over the last few episodes. Like, "You better come back here. If you don't come back here, I'm gonna turn you over. I know some stuff about you guys. I could get you into real trouble." And then they go there and they're like, "I can't believe Sid betrayed us." And like, you can't.
Yeah, I did think that was odd when he said we'll go back to Ord Mantell, like before Hunter said that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
maybe
sure?
Don't do that. Maybe
sure?
Don't do that.
Yeah. Even I'm thinking don't do that.
Yeah,
definitely.
Dumb. So we were at the end of it. Overall, what did you guys think of the season?
I think I always enjoyed the show. I don't think it was must-see television, but I like where it fits. It's got a nice, comfortable sort of niche that I think it fills for me.
Yeah, it was all right.
Yeah, I like the animated portion of the Star Wars universe. I always have. I think it doesn't get quite as much credit. There was one part where, the animation has definitely come a long way from when we started with Clone Wars. But there was one part where they land the ship in the forest, and then they're gonna top the rail car, and they're gonna go across. And I was just looking at the animation of the trees and some of the background settings and stuff, and was just like, God, those are beautiful trees. Like, they really have done a beautiful job. There's one scene where they're inside the base, and it's dimly lit, and it's mostly in shadows. And I thought, if I took my glasses off and was, 10 feet away from the screen, it would look pretty close. It would look pretty close as far as the quality of the types of the way they're using dynamic lighting and stuff like that. It's a great looking show. It definitely does, skew a little bit younger, and so therefore it's not necessarily for the three of us. But I do really enjoy it, and I'm glad it exists, and I'm glad that they're telling stories in this part of this time that we really hadn't had before.
Right. Cool. All right, let's move on to the watch list then.
Okay, I'll go first.
All right.
So I mentioned last week, I knew there was something that was coming on May the 4th for, of course, May the 4th be with you. I knew there was a Star Wars property coming to Disney Plus, and I couldn't remember what it was. I went and looked it up, and I found out what it was. It's the Star Wars Young Jedi Adventures. So they have started putting these little mini 3-minute episodes up on YouTube. The actual series is going to start on Disney Plus on May the 4th. I jokingly was calling it Padawan Patrol, because that's what it feels like to me. Like, it really does feel like, when I watched it, I was like, God, this is Paw Patrol, but with lightsabers. It's really funny.
I think I saw this on Disney today, though.
Was it up already? Yeah,
I saw the tile sitting there. Yeah. Oh,
okay. I went to have a look at it, and I was just like, is this something that we should watch? And there's no way in hell. It skews very much. This is more like Paw Patrol, Bubble Guppies. This is not for us. But it also killed me. I could not stop laughing at it. I'm like, who had the idea to do a story based around these younglings, and they're being mentored by Yoda? And I'm like, don't they all get massacred by
yeah. Now, it was Tales of the Jedi is what I saw on today. It was the
oh yeah, we saw that one already. Right?
Story.
Yeah, we saw that one. But yeah, it's kind of a weird thing, because obviously, Yoda is very old by the time we see him in, he dies in Return of the Jedi. He's over 800 years old. Mm-hmm. They could be telling a story from Yoda.
But isn't Grogu 50 years old or something like that?
Well, that's it, right? But when we see Yoda in this little clip that I've put into our show notes here, Yoda pops up, and he looks like old Yoda from Clone Wars. But he could have been looking like that for, 400 years. So they don't really give you a strict timeline as to where this fits. Maybe it will fit in more logically if you sit down and watch it. But I just couldn't help but giggle at the notion that they created this sort of kids show around these these little Jedi younglings that are all hanging out, and they're learning the ways of the Force, and they're going on little adventures and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, sure, this seems pretty unlikely, but okay. And then I was like, but depending on where they fit in the timeline, are all these kids massacred on Order 66 Day? What's the deal here? That's not good. But yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate that they're aiming these different shows. We just talked about how Bad Batch might be aimed sort of at that more tween teen group. This one's clearly aimed at the more 4, 5, 6 year old kind of group. And I'm glad that they have a show, and hopefully it gets more kids who follow and enjoy Star Wars. But I don't think I have to worry about watching this one and missing out. The other thing on my watch list this week was the trailer drop this week for a movie that's coming out later this year called Asteroid City. Asteroid City is the next Wes Anderson movie. I'm a big fan of Wes Anderson's direction and storytelling, and this one kind of fits our milieu. It's basically about a group of these space watchers in this sort of typical Wes Anderson weirdness kind of way, who are basically out at this event, and they think they see a spaceship, and then this sort of stuff about was it a spaceship, are they really aliens, what's sort of going on.
Oh, I see.
It's a fun trailer. It's a funny trailer if you like Wes Anderson movies.
So is it Owen North and Bill Murray and all those guys? And Edward Norton and...
It is a killer cast. I was really like blown away by the number of people who are in it. If you... let's just see if I can call it up quickly here. But towards the end here, they show a list of people who's in it, and it's like bonkers. Because it's like... Not only is it all the people you'd expect, but it's also a lot of other people that hadn't worked previously with Wes Anderson. Anyway, movie's coming June 16th.
Yep.
But yeah, it's Margot Robbie, it's like Edward Norton, it's Tom Hanks is in it. Like it's just this like Murderer's Row. Scarlett Johansson's in it. Plus a lot of the regular sort of people who are in, the Wes Anderson universe. Tony Revolori. Anyway, it looks like a lot of fun, and I don't know if everybody's had the opportunity. Wes Anderson, for a lot of people, he may not be in that like gotta go see him in the movie theater kind of person. They want to go see blockbusters, they want to see certain things. I've seen a couple of Wes Anderson's movies in the theater, and I definitely feel like it's worth it. He's a really interesting filmmaker. He has such an eye for detail and stuff that's really cool. Okay, here's the list. Jason Schwartzman, Scarlett Johansson, Tom Hanks, Jeffrey Wright, Tilda Swinton, Bryan Cranston, Edward Norton, Adrian Brody, Liev Schreiber, Hope Davis, Stephen Park, Rupert Friend, Maya Hawke, Steve Carell, Matt Dillon, Hong Chow, who just got nominated for an Oscar, Willem Dafoe, Margot Robbie, Jake Ryan, he was on White Lotus, Tony Revolori, and Jeff Goldblum. Like, that's the primary cast. That's bonkers.
Sure. Yeah.
So again, people love working with him. He's a really interesting filmmaker, and I think I might try and catch this one in the theater. I like his movies, and I think this looks like fun.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely has.
I've seen a lot of his movies in the theaters too. So not in the recent ones, though, but the previous ones like Darjeeling Tea and Royal Tenenbaums and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. I still haven't made it all the way through the aquatic one.
Life Aquatic. Yeah, it definitely has that Wes Anderson aesthetic to it, doesn't it? Like, you don't even have to put his name on that. You kind of know by looking at it.
Oh, it's unmistakable. Both the way that it looks and just his dialogue is so crisp and quick and, and deadpan, and there's just a real vibe to it that really just makes it clear it's a Wes Anderson movie. But it's not for everybody, but I like it. I think it's funny. And the last thing I had is just a quick recap. I did finally sit down and watch Bullet Train, as I said last week that I was going to, since it popped up on Amazon Prime here. And so myself and number one son sat down and watched it, and blew up real good. It was good. It was not high art, but damn, it was entertaining. It was funny. Smart and just at times kind of campy and silly, but really
it does
good.
Hold up well. I watched it again this weekend too, and then I realized, because when I saw it in the theaters, of course, it was typical, late show, and I nodded off near the end there. I didn't remember the train crash, but I remember the after part. So yeah, that whole sort of CGI of Brad Pitt like flying through the air, that part I did not remember, but I love the banter between the two.
The brothers,
brothers, the twins, the twins. And I didn't realize when I watched it at the time that that's the guy from Kick-Ass, right?
Yeah, that's Aaron Taylor Johnson. That's he's Kick-Ass. He was Quicksilver in the Avengers movie, Avengers: Age of Ultron. Right. He's been in a ton of stuff. There's strong rumors going around that he might get cast as the next James Bond, and I can totally see it. Wow. See it. Because it's him and Brian Tyree Henry from Atlanta, who I love, and he was also in the Eternals. This is just, again, it's one of those ones where you're like, oh my god, that person's in this. Oh my god, that person's in this. Oh my god, that person's in this. Zazie Beetz from Atlanta shows up as well, and from Deadpool 2. But she's in the movie. She's the one with the needles full of snake venom. She shows up and is only in the movie for like 4 minutes. Karen Fukuhara from The Boys is the trolley operator. And again, she only speaks Japanese, and I kept waiting for her to like pull off the wig and like start fighting people or something, but that was the role she was. I thought that was such a great little red herring, because I was like waiting for her to show up and be something, but no, she was just the trolley operator. I was like, oh, okay. And Joey King as the sort of the main villain was really good, and yeah, there's a lot to like there. It was not wasn't a cinematic masterpiece or anything, but as far as like grab your bag of popcorn, it was perfect.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. It was, I was trying to think last week how to describe it. It was sort of, it's a good farce for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's what if everything could possibly go wrong on a job, right? Like it's just everything that could go wrong for the Brad Pitt character does, and yeah, it's funny.
Next time, take the gun.
Next time, take the gun. There's a good moral in this one too. Always take the gun.
That's right. What do you got for us, Jaime?
I have some little anime shorts that Capcom, the video game maker, has been putting out that are really just sort of nice little bits of advertisement for the new Resident Evil 4 remake that's coming out on all the video game consoles. And this one, as this article here says, is what if Resident Evil was a 1970s anime? So it's all really sort of calm and delightful until it goes kind of horribly wrong, but in a kind of child-friendly way, I guess. It's going to be hard to describe the aesthetic. It feels a little bit like My Neighbor Totoro. It feels a little bit like Miyazaki, Speed Racer kind of era type stuff. So it's cute, kind of cute to see something that is ostensibly, rated M for mature and, guns and violence and gore and stuff turned into something kind of approachably, for kiddos. To be clear, the game itself is not for kiddos, but the little anime shorts, they're about a minute long each. There was only one at the time that I grabbed this link, but I think there's several of them now out on YouTube.
All right, well, I must have fallen into a time hole because it is, as we record, it's still March 30th, right? Thursday, March 30th. And so Friday, March 31st is when a lot of these things are supposed to come out. For some reason, the Tetris movie showed up today. Just before we started recording, I watched the first 10 minutes of Tetris, and pretty much the whole story gets revealed in the first 10 minutes. So I don't know what they're going to do for another hour and 50 minutes. But pretty interesting story. I mean, it's an interesting story because, if you're into video games and stuff like that, it was sort of the game that made the Game Boy what it is, and kind of sort of, everybody kind of learned Tetris at the same time, but just in the first 8 minutes, they covered quite a bit of ground already, right? So that's kind of interesting. But like I said, it's not supposed to come out until tomorrow. That said, I mean, also, Big Door Prize, which I believe it was listed as coming out tomorrow. This is a story with Chris O'Dowd. We might have talked about him last week, but it's about a arcade machine that shows up in the corner grocery store, which tells you what the purpose of your life is.
Yeah, I saw the trailer for that.
Right, and so the conflict for the Chris O'Dowd characters, he's a history teacher, and he's trying to tell his students in class, you decide what your future is going to be. You don't go to some gumball machine, and so clearly, everybody goes to the gumball machine and puts their dollar in and gets their life read for them. And so. Yeah, I'm not going to spoil what his result was, but yeah, you can obviously guess that he went into the machine as well. But yeah, so that's an interesting one. And again, those stories have dropped, and also the show that I'm watching called Hello Tomorrow. What's it called again?
Oh, the Apple TV Plus one?
Yeah, the one I was talking about last week. I think the last episode just dropped today. Like I started watching last week's episode, I was catching up, and then I noticed that the next episode just started loading. I'm like, wait a minute, what is wrong with this picture? Because this stuff isn't supposed to load till tomorrow. But whatever, I'll watch it anyway.
Yeah, take the win.
Take the win for sure.
When life gives you free stuff, take the free stuff and run.
Always take the gun next time.
That's always take the gun. That's right.
Next time, take the gun. Cool. Well, I guess that's it for another week. So, Jonathan, if people will get in touch with you, where will they find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram as @JPK News, or on YouTube at youtube.com/@JPK.
And Jaime, if people can get in touch with you?
I'm on Twitter as @DevWithTheHair.
All right. My name is Tim Mitra, TIMMITRA, on the Twitter machine, the Mastodon machine, all the things. YouTube's everything. That's how you find me. So until next time, we'll see you in the future. Bye.
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 You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter at Spockcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpockcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spockcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spockcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
We almost had a special guest today. Tammy was going to come on the show, but she's make it after all.
What did she want to address?
Oh, just she's missing being on podcasts, and I was just chatting with her earlier because actually somebody posted a story somebody posted a story saying that Toronto is one of the worst places to be in a zombie apocalypse. There's a list that came out this morning.
Because it's hard to get into or out of?
Yeah, I don't know. Just because we're hopeless, But my point was
poorly armed compared to our southern neighbors.
Well, my point was, didn't we just go through a whole 3-year trial? Test run.
Yeah,
lots of zombies here, but just where's that list here? Yeah, somebody posted it in one of our work chats today. I asked her if she watched The Last of Us, and if she's caught up on Picard. Here we go. Toronto is one of the worst cities in Canada to survive the zombie apocalypse.
Wow. Okay, come on. I think it was written by somebody from BC.
Yeah, so the top 10 cities to survive are Edmonton, Saskatoon, Guelph, Calgary, Regina, Winnipeg, Kelowna, Sudbury, Kingston, and Abbotsford. Is that because there's nobody there?
Yeah, really. Well, Abbotsford, there's lots of people there, but... Well,
I mean, Edmonton is where they shot The Last of Us, right? Or Alberta?
Yeah, they shot it in Alberta and then up in the mountains in Alberta, too.
Yeah.
Some of it was Calgary, some of it was up in the mountains.
So the top 10 worst ones, St. John, New Brunswick is number 1. Belleville, Ontario, Jonathan, number 2. Trois-Rivières, Montreal, Sherbrooke, Saguenay, number 7 is Quebec, or is Toronto. Moncton, Lethbridge, and Victoria. Victoria, why? Because it's an island? Wouldn't you think if you went to an island, you'd have a greater chance of surviving?
Yeah, but also if you're stuck on there with the zombies, it's hard to get off because you have to go across the strait, and that's a long way to go and not exactly swimmable.
Well, there's also that do zombies float story argument.
I suppose. Yeah. I mean, I guess the consistent theme, I'd be curious to know the methodology, but the consistent theme for those ones that are on the negative side they are populous, and they are, there's no natural land barriers or anything to sort of keep, it's hard to protect any of them too, right? Mm-hmm. Toronto is just a big flat piece of land. There's nothing good about it as far as barricading people in or out or anything like that. I could see why that would not be an ideal defensible position.
Definitely. Release the Kraken, I
found a site that says the Kraken's magic number for the wild card 7th position is 6 wins, if I'm reading this correctly, to guarantee the spot.
So it's any combination of those for them or by the teams that are chasing them, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's a whole bunch of does not control its own destiny for number 1 spot. A whole bunch of other things would have to happen to help them. But it looks like the simplest thing is just win 6 and you'll be fine.
Yeah. Anyway, you slice it. It's an impressive second season for that team. They did really well by making it this far this fast. They're obviously Vegas as their expansion cousin set a high bar, but they're looks like they're going to sneak in there, and 5 points up on the team that's outside looking in, which is Calgary. So it's and season's winding down. We're down to the last 6-8 games for most teams, so it's looking good.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Leafs magic number, and so already clinched at least playoffs. At least, if I understand this, at least the third place in Atlantic Divisional winner, and the magic number is 5 to get the number 2 slot, seed. I don't know what term is used here.
Well, yeah, it would be the number 2 spot in the Atlantic, which would translate to like 4th or 3rd in the Eastern Conference. By the way, they do that stupid newer playoff rankings. So even if they finished above New York, even if they pulled a couple extra points out and finished above New Jersey, they'd still end up having to play Tampa Bay because of this way this stupid system is set up. So it's pretty much locked in at this point. The way that the playoffs are going to go for the Leafs is they're going to play Tampa Bay in the first round. If they can win a few more games down the stretch, they'll have home ice advantage if the series goes the distance. And then if they win that series, they will play the winner of the Boston versus Pittsburgh, Florida, New York Islanders series, which at this point you have to assume is Boston, considering Boston already clinched the number 1 seed in the entire NHL, including the President's Trophy today. The fastest team to 50 wins in NHL history. They're 58-12. They are historically one of the greatest teams that has ever stepped on the ice for an NHL season. They look like they're going to be a Boston this year.
Really?
Boston is going to be a 60-win team. There are only like a handful of 60-win teams in the history of the NHL. And they've also they've cooled down, as strange as that sounds. They were playing 860 hockey for the first half of the year. They were winning 86% of the games they played. That is bonkers. Like, this Boston team is incredible. So, I mean, they are hands down favorites to try and win the Stanley Cup. And so Toronto has its work cut out for it if they think that they're going to go toe-to-toe with first Tampa, which is a tough opponent who's taken them to school a couple times already. And then, even if they squeak through that, have to play Boston. So that they're going to win a cup. They're going to earn it. But hey, baseball season started today too. Yeah. I want a prediction. How are the M's going to do this year?
I don't know. They're currently locked in battle with the Guardians. 0-0 bottom of the 8th is what I'm looking at here. So I don't know. It's you worry about having the sort of hangover from last year. Merely getting into the playoffs was a huge sort of moral victory to go along with the real victories, and you don't want to see a slump after that, right? So, boy, I don't know. They ended last year with it's no longer baseball. It's turned into a game of cricket. Loss to the Astros, bazillion innings.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but everybody's sure excited about it. There's a different sort of vibe in the air around the Mariners.
Yeah, there seems to be a fair bit of love for the Blue Jays this year because they, obviously we lost to the Mariners in that play-in game, but had a pretty competitive season in what is hands down the toughest place in baseball to win, which is the American League East.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at the prognostications on things like ESPN and some other sites this week to sort of see where they think Toronto will sort of fit, and they're saying that they predict that New York, Toronto, and Tampa Bay will all make the playoffs out of one division, and that even Baltimore looks pretty good. It's really only Boston that people are kind of writing off a little bit this year. It's going to be an absolute slugfest in the AL East. But then when those teams play against the Kansas Cities, the Detroits, the Oaklands, the LA Angels, that's where they'll clean up, right? They'll just kill those teams all year. So I think it's going to be interesting. I must admit, I have been a little bit soft on baseball the past few years just because I find all the same criticisms that everybody has. Games are too long, season's too long. There's too much and not enough excitement. Playoffs are always fun, but only especially if your team's actually half decent. But I like some of the stuff that I've seen from the pitch clock, the bigger bases, eliminating the shift. I like what they're trying to do. I think more sports should be a little more aggressive. There was talk for a while in hockey. This would have been early 2000s, maybe 2004-05, when I was covering sports professionally. They were talking about, maybe the NHL needs to do some stuff to change the way the game is, to make it more exciting. They talked about making the nets bigger. They talked about, changing some of the configurations, changing equipment, doing some different stuff. In the end, they did none of it. I really think that I really hope that this works, and I really hope that it works so that people from other sports can be like, oh, it's okay to change. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be a bad thing to evolve. I mean, look at the NFL. I mean, you're an NFL fan. The NFL has changed dramatically over the last 10, 12 years, right? 10 years ago, we were still seeing headhunting hits. We were still seeing, some really dangerous play and a lot of quarterbacks getting hurt. And over the past 10 years, 10, 12 years, we've really seen some of the rules they put in place change the way the game is played. I mean, the running back position has just become like completely different than it was 10 years ago. Even tight ends, even safeties, like some of the positions are just completely changed in value from what they used to be because they've made some of these changes. I hope that baseball's changes, and these are really aggressive, but also well researched. Like they did these minor league experiments with this stuff. I heard an interview with Rob Manfred, the baseball commissioner, the other day. They played 4,000 games in the minor leagues trying all this stuff before they moved it up to the majors. Like they're not messing around. Like they're not going into this lightly. They've tried all this stuff. They've tried it game after game after game after game. They've seen all the variables, all the complications, and they're doing it. And I hope it works. I hope it's great. And I hope that other leagues are like, actually, that's not the worst idea. Maybe it's time for the NBA to, raise the hoop by 6 inches. Maybe it's time to, maybe there's stuff that you can do that'll make some of these games more challenging. Maybe they need to move the 3-point line out. Maybe in hockey, they do need to make the nets taller or bend the posts outwards or something to make, more scoring opportunities. There's always interesting things you can do. Maybe, certain players can't leave certain zones, there's ways that you can be innovative and really make your sports better. And I hope this works for baseball.
Yeah, I think the thing you hit on the nail on the head with was the stuff like the NFL has tried to innovate around, what is going to put the best product on the field for the fans. And so, you have, pretty average garbage quarterbacks playing in the league, like the bottom feeders of the league, who are putting up stats that are way better than some Hall of Famers from the 80s, right? And it's because they adapted the game to make it a lot more friendly to the offense because people wanted to see that. And baseball has, this year notwithstanding, been historically really obsessed with making sure that you have reverence for a guy who played in 1910. Like his stat can never be broken because if it is, then what's the point of the game? Apparently, it seems to be the feeling versus, I don't
show me an entertaining product.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what happened in the Blue Jays game today, but they won 10-9 and just
they won 10-9. It was a slugfest, the whole thing. Yeah.
I mean, that sounds pretty exciting. A slugfest can be boring too, and pitching duels can be super exciting. I'm not saying everything needs to be, 55-49 or something ridiculous like that. Just it's kind of nice to see some production. You see some scores in sports, and I do think that things like innovating on how fans can interact with the players and the product is only for the benefit.
Yeah, no, I think it's when you said some mediocre quarterbacks are putting up historic seasons, was I alone in thinking Kirk Cousins? Did you immediately go to Kirk Cousins?
He's one of those guys who people will pay him money. He flirts with elite, but then, crumples. But you look at his stats and you're like, wow, put his stats up against, I don't know, Dan Marino or Joe Montana. And you'd be like, oh my God, this guy smokes them. He's putting up 4,000 yards, season type stuff, which would have been monstrous in the old game where you could mug a guy and it was totally legal. Whereas now it's like, don't put hands on him. That's pass interference. We want to encourage. It makes life difficult for the defense, and defenders always complain, but people want to see, they want to see highlights. They don't want to see, 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
Yeah, no, and it's true. I mean, think about the number of horse collar tackles and head hits, helmet to helmets, and all that stuff that was a big part of the league 10 years ago. And, but I mean, it was detrimental to the game in the long run because you were getting these amazing players coming out and they were getting so badly hurt that they were only playing I think at one point a few years ago, these statistics said like the average, NFL career was like, 1.2 seasons or something, because guys were just coming in and getting absolutely destroyed, and that was it. Their career was over. I'm like, what's the fun in that? Like, don't you want the best players playing for as long as they can? Of course, it's meant to be a physical and intense sport, but like, not at the expense of like long-term enjoyment. If we draft an amazing talented person, I want to see that person do amazing talented things for the rest of their career. I don't want to see them get destroyed. But yeah, I mean, hopefully baseball's the same way. I mean, hopefully, I'm sure it'll take some adaptation. Like I really am excited to see some of these games. I mean, I don't think this 10-9 game we saw today is necessarily an aberration, just because when the pitchers are feeling off, but they still have to keep up with the pitch clock, when, pitchers can when hitters can lock in and they know that there's no shift against them now, so they can just drive stuff straight up, in between the players. When the bases are bigger and the space between the bags is less now, they're going to see more stolen bases. Like, it should make for a more interesting product and a faster moving one, so that when you decide you're going to sit down and either watch a ball game or listen to it on the radio or go to the park and see a game, you're not in for a 4.5 hour commitment. You hopefully are going to get, when I was covering the Jays back in the day, my favorite day of the week was the day that Roy Halladay pitched, because Roy Halladay was a freaking machine. He pitched so efficiently that the average Roy Halladay game, I think, worked out to be like 2 hours and 8 minutes or something, 2 hours and 10 minutes. Like, he was a great strikeout pitcher, but he was not afraid to try and induce ground balls, and he just got into his groove and just started throwing, and he was like a pitch clock pitcher before the pitch clock existed. If more baseball was like that, if I could watch a ball game in 2.5 hours, I'll watch more baseball for sure.
Yeah, I think finding a way to make your league's product better is great. I mean, look at how like the NBA has done a really good job of making the stars, regardless of which team they're on. And some of that has definitely helped, that unlike the NFL, where you really can't see a person's face, you definitely can see the face of the athlete in the NBA at all times. And there's only, 5 of those guys for any one team on the court at any given time. And, baseball should definitely take advantage of that like there's only 9 of those guys for any given team on the field at any given time, and you can see their face. And, we're probably veering into, in this age of the internet, why can't I just watch my team whenever I want? Why do I have to be like, okay, so these ones are on Apple TV Plus, and these ones are on ESPN, these ones are Root Sports, and hopefully I don't get a blackout. Local thing, which is just silly. I'm like, why does it matter that I'm sitting physically close to Seattle versus sitting in Texas? Like, I shouldn't have a different experience if I was in Zimbabwe or if I was in, London. Like, just let me pay you money to watch your product. How hard is that? And I know it's contracts and everything, but I think the time has come to say, just let the people give you money to watch your fine product. Let them enjoy a brisk game, and not feel like they're in for kind of a slog, and just, find ways to innovate. And if it doesn't work out, that's fine. Just change it next year, learn and adjust.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, I hope it works well. I was contemplating tweeting this week because I was really, really frustrated. The NHL changed. I know you probably weren't as big an NHL fan before your city got a team, but this playoff system that they have that focuses on like these rivalries, these divisional rivalries, just came in 6-7 years ago. Like, it's not that old. Before that, it was much more like the NBA, where it was sort of, 1 plays 8, 2 plays 7.
They don't do that anymore?
They don't. They changed it a number of years ago because they wanted to focus on
sell tickets, right?
Well, yeah. They want rivalries. They want teams to hate each other because it's good for business. But it was meant to cut down on costs, right? Because they wanted teams that were geographically somewhat close. So early in the playoffs, they're not spending as much money, I think, on travel and doing that
Poor
stuff.
NHL, I feel so sorry for them.
Yeah. they're poor guys on their private planes, but they decided they wanted to do that. So this whole run where the Maple Leafs have started from the bottom and gotten to a very competitive place, they've been, because they changed this system, consistently matched against Boston and Tampa Bay, to whom they keep getting pants because those two teams are like, all three of those teams are amongst the top 8 teams in the league, but somebody's got to go because they play each other. And so, it's just been an unfortunate circumstance. And, I'm whinging as a Leafs fan just because it's frustrating to watch a team that's really competitive. Not like, the whole idea is you play hard in the regular season, you get rewarded with a good position, and then you play a team that is commensurately weaker than you so that eventually the cream rise and you get the best matchups later when the focus is on and there's more intensity. It's closer to the, who's going to make the Final Four, who's going to make the Stanley Cup final. Unfortunately, we're not getting that. Like, we're kind of getting cheated out of that. Like, in the first round, we're going to get Toronto versus Tampa Bay. Those are two great teams. One of them is going home in the first round. The second round, we're going to get Boston versus, probably, assuming they don't get knocked off, which would be really, really surprising. It'll be Boston versus either Toronto or Tampa, which, again, second round, it's not exactly the highest stakes. By the time you get to the Eastern Conference Finals, you will probably get one of those three teams versus one of the teams that comes out of the other division in the East. It probably won't be as good a matchup as you could have had if you'd had one of those other matchups later on. And in the end, you're also putting those three great teams against each other to beat the tar out of each other, so that actually makes it maybe a little easier for one of those weaker teams to sort of sneak up and knock them off later on. I just don't think it's a very sound way to do business. I got to be honest, I think the way the NBA does things right now, I hope that's one that the NHL is paying attention to. I really wish there was less ego involved in planning these sports, because a good idea is a good idea, and a good idea that's working right now is the way the NBA is doing it, where they changed their playoff format a few years ago so that teams 1 through 6 in each conference get a playoff spot. Teams 7, 8, 9, and 10 go into a play-in. It is it's sort of a 7 plays 10, 8 plays 9. If 7 wins over 10, they get that 7th spot. If 10 wins, they play a second game, and then it's an aggregate. And then that way you get 2 more teams in the playoffs, or play in anyways. So there's the more sort of focus, because it's a one game winner take all, which is always the most fun thing in sports. And then on top of that, it also keeps more teams in the playoff play-in mix, so that teams don't just tank or throw away their season or not entertain their fans down the stretch by just saying, like, well, to hell with it, we're just going to go for a good draft pick. I think the NHL would be absolutely better if it went to that kind of strategy. But egos prevent those things. They're like, well, we're not going to do what they do because that's what they do. No, a good idea is a good idea. Do good things. Make smart decisions. Don't just say, like, well, we don't want to do that because that's what they do. Do things that are going to make your sport better. Did I knock you out with my excitement?
No, I think it was well said.
I especially somebody who did this for a living for a while there, it bothers me so much. That's why I'm really excited about what baseball did. They admitted, have you seen the commercials, Jaime, the ones with Bryan Cranston, where they're basically like, we know baseball sucked before, but it doesn't suck anymore. Like, it's a really strange tack for a sport to take, to say, like, we kind of sucked, but now we don't. But they're kind of admitting, like, yeah, our games were too long, our games were too slow, our games weren't exciting enough. Here's what we're doing differently. Like, don't be ashamed of those things. Hey, I want to make a better product for you so that if you spend your time and or money on this, it's going to be better for you, is not something to be feeling guilty about or bad about. And, it's not exactly the same as it always was. Well, you know what? It's never going to be. The technology improves, the athletes improve, the health improves, the physical stature of human beings change over time. Like, you're never going to have a one-to-one comparison no matter what you do. So get over yourselves and make a good product, or go die in a corner somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. This has been my soapbox.
Yeah. Thanks for coming out.
I hope you have enjoyed my TED Talk.
Yeah. Listen, I got to jump.
Alrighty.
Talk to you guys next week.
Yes, only 2 shows. Only 2 shows left.
Yay! Okay, two episodes, you mean, or 2 shows?
No,
left?
2 shows. 2 shows, 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Talk to you later.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.
Talk to you later.
The holidays start here at Baker's, with a variety of options to celebrate traditions old and new. You could do a classic herb-roasted turkey or spice it up and make turkey tacos. Serve up a go-to shrimp cocktail or use Simple Truth wild-caught shrimp for your first Cajun risotto. Make creamy mac and cheese or a spinach artichoke fondue from our selection of Murray's cheese. No matter how you shop, Baker's has all the freshest ingredients to embrace all your holiday traditions. Baker's, fresh for everyone.